a struggling single father, working nights just to keep food on the table for his little girl. One stormy night, he helps a woman in trouble, never knowing she's the powerful owner of the very building he scrubs clean. At first, it feels like fate gave him a miracle. But soon, whispers spread. Rumors, layoffs, secrets. And when his daughter innocently tells the elegant woman, "Mommy says you're my daddy," everything changes. Now, hearts collide, pride is tested, and two children's dreams of family hang in the balance. Will this single dad's act of kindness build him a new life? Or destroy the only chance he has at love? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The autumn rain fell in steady sheets, drumming against the glass panels of the office building. Daniel Reyes pushed his mop bucket down the empty hallway, his footsteps echoing in the quiet of the late evening. His shoulders ached from hours of cleaning, but he kept moving. One more floor and he could head home to Lily. Through the lobby's floor-to-ceiling windows, streetlights cast a soft glow on the wet sidewalk. Daniel paused, stretching his tired back. That's when he saw her. A woman in an elegant evening gown, struggling with something near the building's entrance. He set down his cleaning supplies and moved closer to the window. The woman's dress, a deep blue that shimmered even in the dim light, had caught on the decorative iron railing that flanked the building's steps. She tugged at the fabric, but each pull only seemed to make things worse. Daniel's chest tightened as he watched her become increasingly distressed. The rain had already soaked through her dress, and she was shivering. Without hesitation, he grabbed his worn jacket from the hook by the maintenance closet and headed for the entrance. The automatic doors slid open with a soft whoosh, letting in the sound of rainfall and the cool night air. The woman looked up, startled by his approach. Even in her disheveled state, there was something graceful about her. The way she held herself, the elegant curve of her neck. "Ma'am," Daniel said softly, holding out his jacket. "Please, take this. You're getting soaked." She stared at him for a moment, water dripping from her carefully styled hair. Her makeup was starting to run, but there was a warmth in her eyes that made Daniel want to help even more. She began, then glanced down at her trapped dress. "Thank you, but I'm afraid I'm a bit stuck at the moment." Daniel nodded, keeping his voice gentle. "I can help with that too if you'll let me. I have some experience with repairs." The woman's eyebrows raised slightly, but she nodded. Daniel knelt beside her, examining where the delicate fabric had caught on the ornate ironwork. The tear wasn't too bad yet, but it would get worse if they weren't careful. "I have a small sewing kit," he explained, reaching into his pocket. He always carried one. It had become a habit after Lily started school and seemed to come home with a new tear or loose button every other day. "If you don't mind, I can fix this well enough to get you home." The rain continued to fall around them, but Daniel barely noticed. He focused on threading the needle, his hands steady despite the cold. The woman had draped his jacket over her shoulders, and the sight of his worn work coat against her expensive dress created an odd contrast that made his cheeks warm. "You don't have to do this," she said softly. "I'm sure you're eager to get home." Daniel smiled slightly as he began to carefully work the fabric free. "My daughter always says helping others is its own reward. She's 8, but sometimes I think she's wiser than me." The woman laughed quietly, a sound that somehow carried over the rainfall. "Children often are." With gentle movements, Daniel managed to free the dress from the railing. The tear wasn't large, but it needed immediate attention to prevent it from spreading. He positioned himself to block as much rain as he could and began to sew with small, neat stitches. "You're very good at that," she observed, watching his hands work. "Practice," Daniel replied, focusing on the task. "Lily, my daughter. She's very active. Between playground adventures and art projects, I've had to learn." The woman was quiet for a moment, and Daniel worried he'd said too much. But when he glanced up, she was smiling, a genuine expression that transformed her entire face. "A father who can sew," she said. "That's not something you see every day." Daniel felt his ears grow warm, but he kept working. Sometimes we learn what we need to, for the people we love. The last few stitches were the trickiest, but Daniel took his time, making sure the repair would hold. He tied off the thread and carefully snipped it with the small scissors from his kit. The stitches were nearly invisible against the dark fabric. "There," he said, standing slowly, his knees protesting the movement. "It's not perfect, but it should get you home safely." The woman ran her fingers over the repair, amazement clear on her face. "This is remarkable. I don't know how to thank you." Daniel shook his head. "No thanks needed, ma'am. Just glad I could help." She looked up at him then, really looked at him, and something in her expression made Daniel's breath catch. There was a gentleness there, a recognition that made him feel seen in a way he hadn't in a long time. "Thank you," she whispered, the words barely audible above the rain. The moment stretched between them, filled with the steady patter of raindrops and the soft glow of streetlights. Daniel suddenly felt very aware of his worn uniform, the cleaning supplies waiting inside, the vast difference between their worlds. But in her eyes, he saw no judgment, only gratitude and something else he couldn't quite name. The rain continued to fall, creating a curtain of silver around them. Water dripped from the building's overhang, and distant traffic created a muted symphony of city sounds. Yet in that moment, it felt like they were in their own quiet bubble, where labels and status didn't matter, just two people sharing a simple act of kindness on a rainy night. The morning sun filtered through the lobby windows, casting long shadows across the freshly mopped floor. Daniel arrived early, as he always did, trading his night shift uniform for a fresh one in the small maintenance closet. His muscles still ached from last night's work, but the memory of helping that woman in the rain brought a small smile to his face. As he organized his cleaning supplies, excited whispers drifted from the reception desk. Two young receptionists huddled together, their voices carrying across the marble floor. "I heard she's absolutely brilliant," one said, straightening her blazer. "Built her whole company from scratch. And now she owns most of this building," the other added. "Jennifer from accounting says she's going to change everything." Daniel's hands slowed as he arranged his supplies. Change usually meant trouble for people like him. He'd learned that lesson many times over. More people began filtering into the lobby, their designer suits and clicking heels a stark contrast to his worn uniform. The usual morning rush felt different today, charged with anticipation. Small groups gathered near the elevators, their conversations a constant buzz of speculation about the new owner. "Did you see the stock prices this morning?" A man in an expensive suit gestured with his coffee cup. "Ever since the announcement of her taking over." Daniel kept his head down, methodically checking his supply cart. The property management company had called a morning meeting for all building staff and tenants. Mandatory attendance, they'd said. His stomach tightened at the thought. By 9 o'clock, the lobby was packed. Security guards directed people into neat lines, while maintenance staff, including Daniel, stood along the walls. He noticed other cleaning crew members shifting nervously, probably sharing his concerns about what these changes might mean for their jobs. The elevator dinged, and a hush fell over the crowd. The property manager, Mr. Peterson, emerged first, his face beaming with an eager-to-please smile. Behind him walked several people in business attire, their expressions serious and focused. Daniel's heart stopped when he saw her. The woman from last night, the one whose dress he'd fixed in the rain, stepped forward. Gone was the damp evening gown, replaced by an impeccable charcoal suit. Her dark hair was perfectly styled, and she carried herself with natural authority. But Daniel recognized those kind eyes, the same ones that had thanked him so genuinely the night before. Mr. Peterson cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Miss Caroline Hartwell, the new majority owner of Hartwell Properties and this building." The crowd applauded politely. Daniel pressed himself further against the wall, hoping to disappear into the background. His cheeks burned as he remembered kneeling before her in his dirty uniform, needle and thread in hand. Caroline stepped forward, her heels clicking against the marble floor. "Thank you all for coming this morning," she began, her voice clear and confident. "I know change can be unsettling, but I believe in building strong communities within our properties. Every person who works in or visits this building contributes to its success." She paused, her eyes scanning the crowd. Daniel held his breath as her gaze moved across the room. Then it happened. She saw him. Instead of looking away, Caroline's face brightened with recognition. To Daniel's horror, she began walking in his direction. The crowd parted, all eyes following her movement. Daniel felt frozen in place, his hand gripping his cart handle too tightly. In fact, Caroline continued, her voice warm, I'd like to share a perfect example of the kind of community I envision. She stopped directly in front of Daniel, who fought the urge to step backward. Last night, in the pouring rain, this gentleman showed me exceptional kindness. Without hesitation or expectation of reward, he helped a stranger in distress. The entire lobby was silent now, all attention focused on Daniel. His face burned hotter. Mr. Reyes, she said, using his name from his uniform badge, I want to thank you properly for your help last night. Your actions exemplify the values I want to foster in all our properties: kindness, initiative, and dignity. Daniel managed a small nod, overwhelmed by the attention. Just trying to help, ma'am, he said quietly. Caroline smiled, and in that smile he saw the same genuine warmth from the night before. Sometimes, she addressed the crowd, the true measure of a person isn't in their title or position, but in how they treat others when they think no one is watching. The lobby erupted in applause. Daniel stood straight, trying to maintain his composure, as people turned to look at him with newfound interest. Some even smiled. The same people who usually walked past him as if he were invisible. Caroline turned back to address the larger group, continuing her speech about her vision for the building. But Daniel barely heard the words. His mind was spinning with the revelation that the woman he'd helped, the one who'd thanked him so humbly in the rain, was now his boss's boss's boss. He watched her command the room with grace and authority, seeing both the elegant businesswoman and the grateful stranger from the night before. In that moment, standing in his cleaned lobby with the morning sun streaming through the windows, Daniel felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time: pride. The bus rattled over potholes as Daniel stared out the window, watching the city lights blur past. His weathered hands still held the faint scent of cleaning solution, but tonight they also carried the lingering warmth of recognition. The memory of Caroline's smile in the lobby kept playing in his mind, like a sweet melody he couldn't shake. The walk from the bus stop to his modest apartment took exactly 7 minutes. He'd counted them many times. Tonight, though, his steps felt lighter. As he climbed the 3 flights of stairs, the familiar sound of cartoons drifted down the hallway. Mrs. Rodriguez, their elderly neighbor who watched Lily after school, always let his daughter pick the shows. "Daddy!" Lily's excited voice greeted him before he even got the key in the lock. The door swung open, and there she stood in her favorite purple pajamas, her dark curls still damp from her evening bath. "Mi amor," Daniel said softly, scooping her up in a tight hug. She smelled like strawberry shampoo and the chocolate chip cookies Mrs. Rodriguez always baked. "Were you good for Mrs. Rodriguez today?" "Si, Papi. We did homework and made cookies and—" Lily paused, studying his face with the intense focus only an 8-year-old could muster. "You look different. Happy, different." Mrs. Rodriguez appeared in the doorway of their small kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "Buenas noches, Daniel. Everything went well today." After thanking Mrs. Rodriguez and seeing her out, Daniel settled onto their worn couch with Lily curled against his side. The television hummed quietly in the background, casting soft blue light across their living room. "So?" Lily prompted, poking his arm. "Did something good happen? You're smiling more than usual." Daniel chuckled, smoothing her wild curls. "You notice everything, don't you, mija?" He thought about how to explain it to her. Someone noticed me today. Not just as the man who cleans, but as a person." "Was it a pretty lady?" Lily asked, her eyes sparkling with mischief. Daniel felt his cheeks warm. "Actually, yes. Remember the woman I helped in the rain last night? Turns out she's very important. She owns the building where I work." Lily sat up straighter, her eyes wide. "Like a princess?" "No, mi amor, not a princess. A businesswoman. But she—" Daniel paused, remembering how Caroline had sought him out in the lobby, how she'd spoken his name with respect. "She thanked me in front of everyone today, made me feel," he searched for the right words, "made me feel seen." Like when I show my art in school and Miss Thompson puts it on the special wall? Exactly like that, Daniel said, touched by his daughter's simple understanding. Speaking of art, did you finish your homework? They spent the next hour going through Lily's schoolwork, sharing the cookies Mrs. Rodriguez had left, and talking about their days. Daniel helped Lily practice her spelling words, pride swelling in his chest at how quickly she was learning. The next morning came too quickly, as it always did. After dropping Lily at school, Daniel headed to work early for the tenant meeting. The building's main conference room buzzed with activity. Suits and briefcases everywhere, the smell of expensive coffee filling the air. Daniel stood quietly at the back, feeling out of place in his work uniform. He debated whether to attend at all, but the memo had said, all building staff required, so here he was. Caroline entered the room with the same grace she'd shown yesterday, though today she wore a tailored navy suit instead of an evening gown. Her presence commanded attention immediately, and the room fell silent. "Good morning, everyone," she began, her voice carrying clearly. "I want to start by expressing my gratitude for the warm welcome I've received as your new building owner." She went through several points about upcoming improvements and security updates. Daniel listened carefully, taking mental notes about changes that might affect his cleaning routine. Then, Caroline's expression softened slightly. "I'd also like to share a personal experience that I believe exemplifies the kind of community we should strive to be." She glanced around the room, and for a moment, her eyes met Daniel's. 2 nights ago in the pouring rain, I had an unfortunate accident with my dress outside this building. I was frustrated, wet, and feeling rather undignified. Daniel's heart beat faster as she continued. Our janitor, Daniel, didn't hesitate to help. He offered his jacket, and with careful hands, fixed my torn dress. He didn't know who I was. He simply saw someone in need and acted with kindness and respect. Caroline's voice carried genuine warmth. That's the sort of dignity and care I want this building to represent. A few people turned to look at Daniel, some smiling, others merely curious. He felt his face grow warm, but he stood a little straighter, allowing himself to accept the praise. After the meeting, as people filed out, Daniel began collecting empty coffee cups and straightening chairs. The familiar routine helped calm his racing thoughts. That's when he caught fragments of conversation from 2 men in expensive suits lingering by the door. "Nice speech about dignity," one said, adjusting his tie. "But did you see the budget proposals? Major cuts coming." "Yeah," the other replied, lowering his voice. "Heard she's looking at outsourcing maintenance and cleaning services. Cheaper to contract through agencies these days." Daniel's hand stilled on the chair he was straightening. The warmth of recognition from moments ago turned cold in his chest. He thought of Lily, of their small apartment, of the careful budget he maintained to ensure she never went without necessities. The men's voices faded as they walked away, leaving Daniel alone in the conference room. Through the wide windows, morning sunlight streamed in, highlighting the dust motes dancing in the air. He took a deep breath and reached for another coffee cup. Whatever came next, he would face it with the same quiet dignity he always had. For now, there was work to be done, and he would do it well. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the playground of Lincoln Elementary as Daniel walked up the familiar concrete path. His work uniform was carefully hidden beneath his worn brown jacket. He never wanted Lily to feel embarrassed about her father's job. The sound of children's laughter spilled through the open windows of the after-school program building. Inside, the walls were covered with bright finger paintings and construction paper art. Miss Jenkins, the after-school coordinator, greeted him with her usual warm smile. "Ah, Mr. Reyes. Lily's in the reading corner with her new friend. They've been inseparable all week." Daniel followed her gesture to find Lily curled up on a beanbag chair next to a boy with tousled brown hair. They were sharing a picture book, both giggling as they pointed at the pages. "Daddy!" Lily jumped up when she saw him, her dark braids bouncing. "You have to meet Tommy. He's my bestest friend ever." She grabbed Daniel's hand and pulled him toward the reading corner with the eager determination only an 8-year-old could muster. Tommy looked up with bright eyes that sparkled with mischief. He had on khaki shorts and a polo shirt that probably cost more than Daniel's entire outfit, but his sneakers were delightfully scuffed from playground adventures. "Hi, Mr. Reyes." Tommy scrambled to his feet. "Lily told me you can fix anything. Is that true? Even broken robots?" Daniel chuckled, kneeling to meet Tommy at eye level. "Well, I try my best. What kind of robot needs fixing?" Tommy's face lit up. He darted to his backpack and returned with a small mechanical toy. "His arm got stuck yesterday, see?" He demonstrated how the joint wouldn't bend properly. "Daddy can fix it," Lily declared proudly. "He fixed Mrs. Martinez's sewing machine last month and she gave us cookies." Daniel examined the toy carefully, noting the simple mechanism that had come loose. "I might be able to help. Do you mind if I take a closer look?" Tommy handed over the robot without hesitation. Daniel pulled his small toolkit from his jacket pocket, the same one he'd used to fix Caroline's dress. With practiced movements, he adjusted the tiny screw that had worked itself loose. "There we go." He returned the robot to Tommy, who immediately tested the arm. "It works," Tommy exclaimed. "That's so cool. Lily was right. You are magic." Lily beamed at the praise for her father. "Tommy, show Daddy our special place." The boy nodded enthusiastically. "Come on, Mr. Reyes, we made a fort." Daniel found himself being led to a quiet corner of the room, where the children had arranged chairs and blankets into a cozy hideaway. Crayon drawings were taped to the makeshift walls. "This is our house," Lily explained seriously. "See? I drew our family." She pointed to a colorful picture featuring stick figures holding hands. Daniel's heart squeezed when he counted 4 figures in the drawing. Before he could ask about it, Tommy jumped in. "That's you, and that's my mom, and that's me, and Lily," Tommy explained, pointing to each figure. "We play family here every day. Lily's the best sister ever." Daniel's eyebrows rose. "Sister? Uh-huh," Lily nodded. "Tommy's mom is really nice. She wears pretty dresses and smells like flowers." Just then, the sound of heels clicking on linoleum caught their attention. Daniel turned to see Caroline Hartwell walking toward them, elegant as ever in a Navy business suit. His stomach did an odd little flip as he remembered their encounter in the rain. "Tommy, sweetheart, ready to go home?" Caroline called out. "Mom!" Tommy rushed to hug her. "Look what Lily's dad did." He demonstrated the robot's newly working arm. Caroline's eyes widened in recognition. "Mr. Reyes, I didn't realize. Tommy's been talking about his new friend Lily all week." "Mrs. Hartwell," Daniel nodded politely, trying not to think about how she'd praised him in front of the building tenants that morning. "It seems our children have become quite close." Lily tugged on Caroline's sleeve. "Do you like our family drawing?" She pointed to the artwork still visible in their fort. "Tommy said you don't have a husband, just like Daddy doesn't have a wife anymore. So we decided—" "Mommy says you're my daddy," Tommy interrupted with a child's innocent directness. Caroline's cheeks flushed pink. "Tommy, that's not exactly—" "And Tommy says you're my mommy," Lily added happily. Daniel and Caroline's eyes met over their children's heads, a moment of shared embarrassment turning into nervous laughter. The children's simple logic and earnest hopes hung in the air between them. "Well," Caroline said carefully, "it seems they've been quite creative in their playtime." Daniel nodded, running a hand through his hair. "Kids have quite the imagination." "We're not imagining," Lily insisted. "We're family now," Tommy and I decided. "Yeah," Tommy agreed. "Can we have dinner together, please?" The adults exchanged another glance, this one tinged with uncertainty. Daniel thought about the overheard conversation about budget cuts, about the vast difference between their worlds. Caroline seemed to be wrestling with her own thoughts. Miss Jenkins chose that moment to call out, "5 minutes until closing time, everyone." "We should get going," Caroline said softly. "Tommy, say goodbye to Lily and Mr. Reyes." "Bye, sister." Tommy hugged Lily tight. "Bye, Mr. Reyes. Thanks for fixing my robot." As Caroline led Tommy away, Daniel could hear the boy chattering about their family fort and asking when they could all have dinner together. He watched them go, noting how Caroline's hand trembled slightly as she adjusted her purse strap. Lily tugged on his jacket. "Daddy, can Tommy and his mom come over sometime?" Daniel looked down at his daughter's hopeful face, seeing the longing there that she usually kept hidden. "We'll see, Mija, we'll see." He helped her gather her backpack, his mind spinning with the complications of their children's innocent declaration of family. The memory of Caroline's nervous laughter echoed in his thoughts, along with the weight of their separate worlds and the uncertain future of his job at her building. Daniel stood at his small kitchen window, watching the sunset paint streaks of orange and pink across the sky. The dishes from their simple dinner of mac and cheese were done, and Lily's happy humming drifted from her bedroom where she was playing with her stuffed animals. His daughter's words from earlier that afternoon still echoed in his mind. "Mommy says you're my daddy." He dried his hands on a worn dish towel and sank into one of the mismatched chairs at their kitchen table. The wood creaked beneath him. Another thing that needed fixing. The list seemed endless these days, just like his worries. Lily's voice carried through the thin walls. "And then Tommy said we could be brother and sister forever." She was talking to her favorite teddy bear, Mr. Buttons, who served as her most trusted confidant. Daniel's heart squeezed. He hadn't seen Lily this excited about a friendship before. Tommy seemed like a good kid, polite, friendly, with that same sparkle of imagination that Lily had. But the thought of their growing attachment made his stomach knot. If he lost his job at the building, they might have to move to a different school district. The thought of breaking Lily's heart was almost unbearable. "Daddy?" Lily appeared in the doorway, clutching Mr. Buttons. Her dark curls were coming loose from her braids, just like her mother's used to. "Can Tommy come over to play sometime?" Daniel forced a smile. "We'll see, Mija. Maybe soon. His mom is really nice," Lily continued, climbing onto his lap. "She smells like flowers, and she has pretty shoes like Mommy used to wear in the pictures." Daniel stroked her hair, remembering Maria's collection of heels that still sat in a box in his closet. He couldn't bear to give them away. "Caroline, Mrs. Hartwell, is very nice," he agreed carefully. "Tommy says they live in a big house with a garden," Lily said dreamily. "Do you think we could have a garden someday?" Daniel's chest tightened. Their small apartment's balcony barely had room for the 2 potted plants they kept alive. "Maybe someday, mi amor. But you know what? We have something better than a garden. We have each other." Lily nodded against his chest, yawning. "I know, Daddy, but wouldn't it be nice to have more people to love?" Her innocent words hit him like a physical blow. He thought of the whispered conversations he'd overheard about budget cuts, about the way his co-workers had started looking at him with pity. The building's cleaning contract was just numbers on a spreadsheet to someone like Caroline, no matter how kindly she had treated him. "Time for bed, Pequeña," he said softly, standing with her in his arms. She was getting almost too big to carry, but he wasn't ready to let go of these moments yet. After tucking Lily in and reading her favorite story, Daniel sat on the edge of his own bed. He pulled out the small sewing kit he always carried, the one he'd used to fix Caroline's dress. Maria had taught him to sew after Lily was born, insisting that a father should know how to mend things. "Life breaks sometimes," she'd said, "but we can always stitch it back together." He ran his thumb over the worn fabric of the case. What would Maria say about all this? About their daughter's newfound brother and his elegant mother? About the looming possibility of starting over again? Across town, in a carefully decorated living room, Caroline Hartwell paced back and forth, her phone pressed to her ear. Her heels had been kicked off hours ago, and she'd changed into comfortable loungewear, but her mind wouldn't let her rest. "I can't explain it, Rachel," she said to her oldest friend. He didn't hesitate. There I was, soaked and embarrassed, and this man, this janitor, treated me with more genuine kindness than any of the executives I deal with daily." "Well, that's not exactly a high bar," Rachel chuckled through the phone. "But go on." Caroline sank onto her plush sofa, tucking her feet beneath her. "You should have seen him with that little sewing kit of his, such careful, precise movements, like he was handling something precious, not just fixing a stranger's torn dress in the rain." "And now your Tommy's decided his daughter is his new sister?" Rachel asked, amusement clear in her voice. "You should see them together, Rach. Tommy's never connected with anyone like this before. He's always been so shy since the divorce, but with Lily." Caroline trailed off, remembering how her usually reserved son had practically glowed with happiness that afternoon. "And the father?" Rachel prompted. "What's he like?" Caroline found herself smiling despite her confusion. "Different. There's this dignity about him, no pretense. When he looks at you, you feel like he really sees you, not your position or your wealth or what you can do for him. Today, when Lily made that comment about me being her daddy, he handled it with such grace. Just a gentle laugh, no awkwardness or overreaction. He sounds wonderful," Rachel said softly. "So what's the problem?" Caroline stood again, moving to her window to look out at the city lights. "The board is pushing for major cuts. The cleaning contract is one of the biggest expenses we could trim. I've spent all day looking at spreadsheets trying to find another way, but you're worried about him losing his job." "Yes. And not just because of Tommy and Lily's friendship. There's something about Daniel Reyes that makes me question everything I thought I knew about success, about what really matters." Caroline pressed her forehead against the cool glass. "I keep thinking about how he looked that night in the rain. Not a hint of resentment or superiority in helping someone who clearly has more than he does. Just pure kindness." "Caroline," Rachel said gently, "when was the last time someone made you feel this way?" The question hung in the air, unanswered. Caroline watched a car's headlights move through the darkness below, thinking of Daniel's quiet strength, of the way he'd made her feel seen and respected even when she was at her most vulnerable. "I should go," she said finally. "Tommy needs help with his science project before bed." "Of course," Rachel replied. "But Caroline, don't dismiss these feelings just because they don't fit into a spreadsheet." After hanging up, Caroline lingered by the window, her reflection ghostly in the glass. She touched the hem of her designer dress, the one Daniel had fixed, hanging in her closet. His neat, tiny stitches were barely visible, but she knew they were there. Just like she knew she couldn't shake the memory of his kindness, or the way it had made her feel in that moment. Not like a wealthy building owner, but simply like a woman worthy of compassion. The fluorescent lights hummed softly overhead as Daniel pushed his cleaning cart down the empty hallway. Night had fallen hours ago, and most of the offices were dark and silent. His footsteps echoed against the polished floors as he made his rounds, collecting trash from each office suite. He paused at the window, noticing how the city lights twinkled like stars below. These quiet moments were when he missed Maria the most. She would have loved hearing about today's events, about Lily's innocent comment and the kind woman who owned the building. Maria had always said that kindness was a light that guided people together. The sharp click of heels against marble broke through his thoughts. Daniel turned to see Caroline walking briskly down the hallway, her elegant blazer slightly rumpled and her hair looking less perfect than usual. She carried a stack of folders under one arm. "Oh, good evening, Daniel," she said, seeming surprised to find anyone else in the building this late. "I didn't expect. Well, I had to come back for some tenant files. I forgot." "Evening, Miss Hartwell," Daniel replied, automatically straightening his posture. "Would you like me to unlock the file room for you?" She smiled, though exhaustion showed around her eyes. "Please. And Caroline is fine, especially after hours." Daniel retrieved his keys and led the way to the file room. As he opened the door, Caroline flicked on the lights and headed straight for a filing cabinet. While she searched through folders, Daniel continued his work, gathering trash bags from nearby offices. "These bags look heavy," Caroline commented as she emerged from the file room, watching him struggle with multiple overfilled bags. "Let me help you take them down." "Oh no, Miss Hart." "Caroline," Daniel corrected himself. "That's not necessary. This is my job." "Nonsense. I could use the exercise after sitting at my desk all day." She set down her folders and grabbed one of the bags before he could protest further. Together, they made their way toward the service elevator, but a sign reading "out of order" greeted them. Daniel sighed. "We'll have to use the stairs, but really, I can manage." "Already committed," Caroline said with a determined smile, heading for the stairwell. "Though I should warn you, these heels weren't made for manual labor." They began their careful descent, Daniel leading the way. The bag Caroline carried kept bumping against her legs, and she had to hold onto the railing with her free hand. "How do you do this every night?" she asked, slightly out of breath by the second floor. You get used to it, Daniel replied, though usually I take smaller loads. Well, now I know why you don't need a gym membership, Caroline joked, pausing to adjust her grip on the bag. Just then, her heel caught on a step. She stumbled forward with a small yelp, the trash bag swinging wildly. Daniel quickly reached back to steady her, but the sudden movement caused his own bag to split open. Paper clips, crumpled papers, and coffee cups cascaded down the stairs. They stood frozen for a moment before Caroline burst into laughter. "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry." Daniel couldn't help but join in, the absurdity of the situation breaking through his usual reserve. Here was the building's owner, helping him with trash duty and creating more mess in the process. "I think I'm fired from garbage detail," Caroline said between giggles, setting down her intact bag to help gather the scattered trash. "Probably for the best," Daniel agreed with a warm smile. "Though, I appreciate the effort." As they collected the mess, Caroline's heel slipped again on a stray paper, and she grabbed Daniel's arm to keep her balance. Their eyes met, both still fighting back laughter at their shared clumsiness. The moment was broken by the sound of the stairwell door opening above them. Frank, one of the evening security guards, peered down at them. His eyes narrowed as he took in the scene. The building's owner and the janitor, surrounded by scattered trash, Caroline's hand still on Daniel's arm. "Everything all right here?" Frank asked, his tone carrying an edge that made Daniel's smile fade. "Just fine," Caroline answered cheerfully, seemingly oblivious to Frank's suspicious look. "Though I'm proving to be terrible at trash disposal." Frank didn't reply, but Daniel heard him mutter something under his breath as he turned away. The words, "getting cozy with the boss," drifted down the stairwell, making Daniel's face burn with embarrassment. Caroline was gathering the last few papers, but Daniel noticed how the easy warmth of their shared moment had dissipated, replaced by an awkward tension. He quickly finished collecting the spilled trash into a new bag, keeping his eyes focused on the task. "I can handle it from here," he said quietly, taking the papers from Caroline's hands. "You should get back to your files." Daniel stood in his tiny kitchen, carefully spreading peanut butter on whole wheat bread. His hands were steady from years of precise maintenance work, but his heart fluttered with an unfamiliar nervousness. Through the narrow window above the sink, he could hear Lily and Tommy's laughter floating up from the playground below. "Daddy, can we have the strawberry jam?" Lily called from the doorway, her cheeks flushed from running up 3 flights of stairs. "Of course, mi corazon," Daniel replied, reaching for the jar. "Everything okay down there?" Tommy appeared behind Lily, his designer sneakers scuffed from play. "We're making a castle in the sandbox," he announced proudly. "But we got hungry." Daniel couldn't help but notice how different Tommy's clothes were from Lily's well-worn but clean play clothes. Yet the children didn't seem to notice or care. They moved around each other with the easy familiarity of old friends, despite having only known each other for a few weeks. "The sandwiches are almost ready," Daniel said, carefully cutting them into triangles the way Lily liked. "Would you two like to help me pack the basket?" Both children nodded eagerly. Daniel handed them paper napkins and juice boxes while he wrapped the sandwiches in wax paper. The picnic basket was actually an old milk crate he'd lined with a clean dish towel, but the children treated it like a treasure chest. "Can we bring the cookies I helped you bake?" Lily asked, already pulling a chair to reach the counter where they'd stored yesterday's batch of snickerdoodles. "Good idea, mija." "Tommy, would you like to pick how many each person gets?" Tommy's eyes widened at being given such an important task. "4 each," he declared after serious consideration, "because we're 4 people, me, Lily, you, and Mom when she comes." Daniel's hands stilled for a moment. He hadn't expected Caroline to stay when she came to pick up Tommy. She probably had important meetings or fancy lunch plans. But he kept his voice light as he responded, "That's very thoughtful, Tommy. We'll pack enough just in case." The children thundered back down the stairs ahead of him, the promise of food and play making them extra energetic. Daniel followed more slowly, carrying the makeshift picnic basket and a worn blanket that had once belonged to Maria. The small park was really just a patch of grass with a sandbox and a couple of benches, squeezed between apartment buildings. But on this sunny Saturday morning, with children's laughter echoing off the brick walls, it felt like somewhere special. Daniel spread the blanket under the shade of the park's single maple tree. He watched as Lily and Tommy returned to their elaborate sand castle, complete with moats and towers made from old paper cups they'd found. "Mr. Reyes," Tommy called out, "can you help us make a drawbridge?" "Coming," Daniel replied, grateful for the distraction from his thoughts. He knelt in the sand, showing them how to use a piece of cardboard and string to create a working drawbridge. The children's excitement over such a simple thing made his heart feel full. "Now it's perfect," Lily declared. "A real castle for a real family." Daniel glanced at his watch, noting it was almost time for Caroline to arrive. He started arranging the sandwiches and cookies on the blanket, making sure everything looked as nice as possible despite their humble offerings. Right on time, the click of Caroline's shoes announced her arrival, but instead of her usual business attire, she wore jeans and a casual blouse. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she carried a canvas bag over her shoulder. "Mom," Tommy ran to her, sending sand flying. "Look at our castle. Mr. Reyes helped us make a drawbridge that really works." Caroline smiled, letting Tommy pull her toward the sandbox. "It's wonderful, sweetheart. Hello, Daniel, Lily." "Hi, Miss Hartwell," Lily said shyly, then brightened. "Would you like to see inside the castle? We made rooms for everyone." Daniel stood up, brushing sand from his knees. "We were just about to have lunch," he said, gesturing to the blanket. "Tommy helped pack enough for everyone, but I understand if you have other plans." Caroline's eyes softened as she took in the simple spread. "Actually, I brought some fruit and cheese," she said, lifting her canvas bag. "I thought, well, it's such a beautiful day. I'd love to join you if that's okay." The children cheered before Daniel could respond. He found himself helping Caroline settle onto the blanket while Lily and Tommy ran back and forth, proudly showing her every detail of their castle. "The drawbridge is very impressive," Caroline said, accepting a sandwich triangle from Daniel. "You're good with your hands." Daniel felt his cheeks warm. "Simple engineering," he said modestly. "I used to do carpentry before." He trailed off, not wanting to mention Maria. But Caroline seemed to understand. She began unpacking containers of strawberries and cubed cheese, arranging them alongside his sandwiches and cookies. The food merged together naturally, much like the way their children had become friends. They ate in comfortable silence, watching Lily and Tommy act out elaborate stories with their sandcastle. The spring breeze carried the scent of blooming flowers from someone's window box, and sunlight filtered through the maple leaves, creating dancing patterns on the blanket. "This is nice," Caroline said softly, accepting a cookie from Lily, who was playing hostess. "Tommy hasn't stopped talking about Lily all week. Thank you for having us." Daniel watched as Tommy carefully broke his cookie in half to share with Lily. "They're good for each other," he replied. "Lily, she hasn't been this happy in a long time." The children's laughter rang out again as they discovered a butterfly landing on their castle. Caroline leaned back on her elbows, her usual professional facade completely relaxed. Daniel found himself noticing how the sunlight brought out auburn highlights in her hair, and how her smile seemed more real than the polite ones she wore at the building. Tommy flopped down between them, reaching for another cookie. "Can we do this every Saturday?" he asked hopefully. Before either adult could respond, Lily added, "Please? It's like a real family picnic." Daniel and Caroline's eyes met over the children's heads. There was something warm and uncertain in Caroline's gaze that made Daniel's heart skip. The moment stretched between them, full of unspoken possibilities. "Well," Caroline said, finally, reaching for another strawberry, "I suppose we'll have to see what next Saturday brings." The children seemed satisfied with this non-answer and ran back to their castle, leaving Daniel and Caroline sitting together on the blanket. The simple meal and quiet conversation continued, neither of them mentioning the time or making moves to leave. For just this moment, under the maple tree with their children's laughter as background music, they could pretend they were simply a family enjoying a Saturday picnic. Monday mornings were always the hardest. Daniel pushed his cleaning cart through the quiet hallways of the office building, his footsteps echoing against the polished floors. The weekend crew never quite met his standards, and there was always extra work to do after their shift. He wheeled his cart to the supply closet, fighting back a yawn. The early morning light filtered through the lobby's tall windows, casting long shadows across the marble floor. As he reached for his mop bucket, something caught his eye. A cream-colored envelope nestled against the worn blue plastic. Daniel picked it up carefully, noting the weight of the expensive paper. His name was written across the front in elegant cursive. His work-roughened fingers hesitated before opening it, not wanting to smudge the pristine envelope. Inside was an invitation, the kind he'd only seen in movies. Gold lettering sparkled on the thick paper. The Anderson Children's Foundation Annual Charity Gala, he read softly to himself. Below the formal text was a handwritten note in the same careful script as the envelope. Daniel, your presence would mean so much to me. Please come. Caroline. His heart skipped a beat. The date was this Saturday evening, and at the bottom was a note about black tie attire. Daniel sank onto his bucket, the invitation trembling slightly in his hands. The sound of clicking heels against marble made him look up. Caroline stood there, elegant as always in her navy business suit, but her expression was almost shy. "I hope you don't mind," she said, gesturing to the invitation. "I wanted to deliver it personally, but I'm honored," Daniel managed, standing quickly. "But I don't think Please don't say no yet," Caroline interrupted gently. "It's for a wonderful cause. We raise money for after-school programs, like the one Tommy and Lily attend." Daniel's chest tightened at the mention of their children. He looked down at his worn uniform, then back at the invitation. "I've never been to anything like this." "That's exactly why you should come," Caroline said, her voice warm. "The foundation needs perspective from people who truly understand the families we're trying to help. Your insight would be invaluable." A maintenance call crackled over Daniel's radio, breaking the moment. He clipped it back to his belt and carefully tucked the invitation into his pocket. "I'll think about it," he promised. Caroline's smile lit up her face. "That's all I ask." She turned to go, then paused. "Oh, and Daniel, bring Lily. There's a children's room with activities during the gala. Tommy will be there too." The thought of Lily's face when he told her made his heart lighter. She'd been talking about Tommy non-stop since their playground picnic. The rest of his shift passed in a blur of floor wax and window cleaner, but Daniel's mind kept returning to the invitation in his pocket. During his lunch break, he pulled it out again, running his fingers over the embossed letters. When his shift ended, Daniel headed straight to his small apartment. He found Lily at the kitchen table, homework spread out before her, while their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, watched over her from the couch. "Daddy!" Lily jumped up to hug him. "How was work? Did you see Tommy's mom?" Daniel lifted her up, her small arms wrapped tight around his neck. "Actually, Princesa, I did. And she gave us a special invitation." Lily's eyes grew wide as Daniel showed her the elegant card. "A real party? Like Cinderella?" "Something like that," Daniel chuckled, setting her down. He thanked Mrs. Rodriguez and saw her to the door before turning back to his daughter. "But first, we need to check something." Daniel led Lily to his bedroom closet. In the back, protected by a plastic dry cleaning bag, hung his only suit. He'd bought it 3 years ago for a cousin's wedding, dark charcoal gray with subtle pinstripes. He hadn't worn it since. "Can I help you get ready, Daddy?" Lily bounced on her toes as Daniel carefully removed the suit. "I can make it extra special." "I don't know, mija. This needs to look perfect." "Please?" Lily's eager face melted his hesitation. "I'll be super careful. I promise." Daniel smiled and pulled out his shoe polish kit. "Okay, you can help with the shoes. But be very careful with the polish." They set up at the kitchen table, spreading newspaper across the surface. Daniel showed Lily how to apply the polish in small circles, just as his own father had taught him years ago. Her small face was screwed up in concentration as she worked, the tip of her tongue sticking out slightly. "Tommy says his mom has lots of fancy dresses," Lily chatted as she polished. "Do you think she'll wear a pretty one to the party?" "I'm sure she will," Daniel replied, carefully inspecting the suit for any spots that needed attention. "And will there be dancing?" Lily looked up hopefully. "Like in the movies?" Daniel paused in his brushing. He hadn't even thought about dancing. "Maybe," he said carefully. "But I'm going there to support the foundation, not to dance." Lily nodded sagely, returning to her polishing. "That's okay, Daddy. But you should practice a little bit, just in case." "I can help." Daniel watched his daughter methodically working on his shoes, her dark hair falling across her face just like her mother's used to do. The sight made his chest ache, with a familiar mixture of love and loss. "There!" Lily held up one shoe triumphantly. "Look how shiny!" The leather gleamed in the afternoon light, and Daniel had to admit she'd done an excellent job. "Perfect, mija. Now we just need to do the other one." As they worked together, Daniel found himself humming an old song his wife used to love. Lily joined in, making up her own words about shiny shoes and fancy parties. Her eyes shone with pride as they finished, carefully placing the shoes beside the freshly pressed suit. "You're going to look so handsome, Daddy," she declared, giving him a fierce hug. "Like a real prince." Daniel stood at the entrance of the grand ballroom, his hand gentle but firm around Lily's small fingers. The space before them sparkled like something from a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light across polished marble floors, and elegant tables draped in white linens circled a gleaming dance floor. Lily squeezed his hand, her eyes wide with wonder. "Daddy, it's just like Cinderella," she whispered. She twirled in her best dress, a pale blue number they'd found at the second-hand store, and carefully altered together. Daniel had spent 3 evenings adjusting the hem and adding tiny, sparkly buttons down the back. "You're prettier than any princess," Daniel said softly, tugging at his tie. The suit he wore was his only good one, cleaned and pressed with meticulous care. He'd polished his old dress shoes until they gleamed, though they couldn't quite hide their worn edges. The room buzzed with conversation and tinkling laughter. Ladies in flowing gowns moved gracefully between clusters of men in tuxedos. Daniel felt his throat tighten. He recognized some of them as tenants from the building, though they'd never spared him a second glance as he mopped their floors. "Mr. Reyes!" A familiar voice cut through his anxiety. Tommy appeared, dressed in a miniature suit, and rushed toward them. "Lily, you look so pretty!" Lily beamed, letting go of Daniel's hand to twirl again. "Tommy, your suit matches my daddy's." Caroline appeared behind her son, stunning in a deep purple evening gown. Her smile was warm and genuine as she approached them. "Daniel, Lily, I'm so glad you came." She knelt slightly to meet Lily's eyes. "You look absolutely beautiful, sweetheart." "Thank you for inviting us," Daniel managed, trying to keep his voice steady. "This is quite something." "Come," Caroline said, taking his arm naturally, as if they did this every day. "Let me introduce you to some people who've been asking about you." Daniel felt his panic rise. "About me? The man who taught me about true kindness on a rainy night?" Of course. Her eyes sparkled with something that made his heart skip. "Tommy, why don't you and Lily go check out the dessert table? Just don't spoil your dinner." The children needed no second invitation, scampering off hand in hand. Daniel watched them go, grateful for the moment to collect himself. Caroline led him toward a group of distinguished-looking guests. Daniel recognized the city's deputy mayor, and what he was pretty sure was the CEO of a major tech company. "Everyone," Caroline said, her voice clear and confident. "I'd like you to meet Daniel Reyes." The group turned, curious eyes taking in his presence. Daniel fought the urge to shrink back, standing straighter instead. "Daniel is one of the most remarkable people I've had the pleasure of meeting," Caroline continued. "He's taught me more about dignity and strength in a few chance encounters than I've learned in years of board meetings." A silver-haired woman in diamonds raised her eyebrows. "Oh, do tell." Caroline's hand remained steady on Daniel's arm as she shared the story of that rainy night. She spoke of his kindness, his quiet competence, the way he'd offered help without expectation of reward or recognition. "In my experience," Caroline said, "true character shows itself in small moments when nobody's watching. Daniel has that rare quality, a man of quiet strength and dignity." The group murmured appreciatively, and to Daniel's surprise, they began asking him questions, genuine ones, about his daughter, his work, his perspective on community building. They listened to his careful answers with real interest, nodding and engaging. Daniel felt something warm bloom in his chest. Here he was, a janitor in a borrowed suit, being treated as if his thoughts mattered. As if he mattered. He caught Caroline's eye and saw pride there, along with something else that made his heart beat faster. Across the room, Lily and Tommy sat at a table, heads bent together over plates of tiny desserts, giggling and whispering. The chandelier light caught the sparkly buttons on Lily's dress, making them twinkle like stars. For this moment, watching his daughter shine in a world he'd never dreamed they'd enter, Daniel felt overwhelmed with happiness. Caroline's words echoed in his mind. A man of quiet strength and dignity. Perhaps, he thought, watching her smile at him, there was more possible in this world than he'd allowed himself to believe. The evening stretched before them like a dream, full of possibility and unexpected joy. Daniel stood a little straighter, Caroline's hand warm on his arm, ready to embrace whatever came next. The orchestra struck up a new song, its melody floating through the sparkling air. Around them, couples began moving toward the dance floor, and Daniel saw Lily watching the dancers with wide-eyed wonder, her dessert forgotten. The late evening air wrapped around them like silk, as Daniel, Caroline, and their children made their way through the parking lot. Lily skipped ahead with Tommy, their laughter echoing off the brick walls of nearby buildings. Their shoes clicked against the pavement in a gentle rhythm that seemed to match the fading notes of music still drifting from the ballroom. "Thank you for coming tonight," Caroline said, her voice soft in the darkness. She walked close to Daniel, her cream-colored evening gown catching the light from nearby lampposts. "Having you here made everything feel real." Daniel smiled, his chest warm with a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. "I should be thanking you. Lily hasn't stopped grinning all evening." Ahead of them, Tommy dramatically bowed to Lily, making her giggle as she attempted a wobbly curtsy in return. The children had spent most of the evening practicing their fancy manners, as they called them, much to the amusement of the other guests. "Did you see Mrs. Peterson's face when Tommy asked Lily to dance?" Caroline laughed, shaking her head. "I thought she was going to melt from the cuteness." "They certainly stole the show," Daniel agreed, remembering how the wealthy donors had parted like a sea to watch the two 8-year-olds attempt a waltz. Tommy had been surprisingly gentlemanly, while Lily had beamed with pure joy. They reached Caroline's sleek black car, and Daniel opened the passenger door for her without thinking. The simple gesture felt natural, like something he'd done 1,000 times before. Caroline's eyes met his, and for a moment, the world seemed to pause. "Daddy, can we do this again?" Lily asked, breaking the spell as she tugged at his sleeve. "Tommy says there are more fancy parties coming up." "We'll see, sweetheart," Daniel replied, helping her adjust the cardigan he'd insisted she bring along. The night had grown cooler, and even though she'd protested that princesses don't wear sweaters, he'd known better. Tommy climbed into the back seat of the car, then leaned out the window. "Mom, can Mr. Reyes come to all our parties? He knows how to fix bow ties. Dad never showed me that before he left." A flash of something, perhaps pain, perhaps understanding, crossed Caroline's face at her son's words. Daniel felt a familiar ache in his chest, recognizing the look of a parent trying to navigate their child's innocent honesty about absent parents. "Time to head home, champ," Caroline said gently to Tommy, skillfully redirecting the conversation. "Say goodnight to Lily and Mr. Reyes." The children exchanged elaborate waves and good evenings in their best attempted British accents, a game they'd developed during the gala. Daniel closed Caroline's door after she settled in, and their eyes met once more through the window. "Drive safely," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Caroline nodded, her smile soft and genuine. "Thank you for making this evening special, Daniel." As the car pulled away, Lily slipped her hand into his. "Daddy, you look happy." Daniel squeezed her hand, surprised to find that his cheeks hurt from smiling. "I am happy, sweetheart. I am." The walk home was filled with Lily's excited chatter about every detail of the evening. The fancy desserts, the music, the way Caroline had looked like a movie star in her dress. Daniel listened, treasuring each word, knowing these were the moments that made all his hard work worthwhile. The next morning arrived too quickly. Daniel arrived at work early, as usual, but something felt different. The building seemed to hold on to the magic of the previous night, and he found himself humming as he checked his supply closet. Well, if it isn't the social climber himself, The voice came from behind him, sharp and cold. Daniel turned to find Mark Stevens, one of the other maintenance workers, leaning against the doorframe. His arms were crossed, and his expression held none of the warmth from the previous evening's gala. "Morning, Mark," Daniel said evenly, continuing to count cleaning supplies. "Must be nice, getting cozy with the new owner?" Mark continued, his voice dripping with disdain. "That's quite a strategy you've got there, playing the poor single dad card. Bet you think you're real clever." Daniel's hands stilled on the bottle of floor cleaner he'd been holding. The warmth from last night drained away, replaced by a cold weight in his stomach. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said quietly, trying to keep his voice steady. Mark stepped closer, his sneer visible in the fluorescent lighting of the supply closet. "Oh, come on, we all see what you're doing. Showing up at fancy galas, getting special introductions. You think sucking up to Ms. Hartwell is going to save your job when the cuts come?" The words hit Daniel like physical blows. Each syllable seemed to chip away at the dignity he'd felt just hours before, standing tall in his pressed suit, watching his daughter dance with new friends. "You're wrong," Daniel managed to say. But Mark was already turning away. "Just remember," Mark called over his shoulder, "when the axe falls, all your brown-nosing won't mean a thing. You're still just the guy who pushes a mop." The door clicked shut behind him, leaving Daniel alone in the supply closet. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, harsh and unforgiving, so different from the warm glow of last night's chandeliers. He leaned against the metal shelving, Mark's words echoing in his head, turning the beautiful memories of the gala into something tainted and ugly. The bottle of floor cleaner slipped from his suddenly numb fingers, clattering against the concrete floor. Daniel stared at it, remembering how just hours ago he'd felt like he belonged in Caroline's world. Now, in the cold light of morning, he wondered if he'd been fooling himself all along. Daniel sat on a weathered wooden bench at the playground, his work uniform traded for worn jeans and a faded blue shirt. The afternoon sun warmed his face, but his heart felt heavy. The cruel words from his coworker that morning kept echoing in his mind. "Must be nice, getting cozy with the boss, to save your job." He watched as Lily and Tommy chased each other around the jungle gym, their laughter pure and unburdened. Lily's pigtails bounced with each step, and Tommy's untied shoelaces flopped against the ground. Their joy was a welcome distraction from his troubled thoughts. "Tag, you're it," Lily squealed, tapping Tommy's shoulder before darting away. "No fair. I wasn't ready," Tommy protested, but his wide grin showed he didn't really mind. Daniel smiled despite himself. The playground was nothing fancy, just a simple setup with swings, slides, and climbing bars. But the kids made it their kingdom, a far cry from the elegant ballroom where they'd all been just the night before. The memory of the gala made his stomach twist. He'd felt so proud standing there in his freshly pressed suit, watching Caroline introduce him to her friends. Now he wondered if everyone had been whispering behind their champagne glasses, assuming exactly what his coworker had said. "Mind if I join you?" Daniel looked up to find Caroline standing there, holding a paper bag from the local bakery. She wore casual clothes, jeans, and a simple sweater, but somehow still looked elegant. His heart did a familiar flip, followed by a pang of guilt. "Please," he said, sliding over to make room. Caroline sat down and opened the bag. "I brought some treats. I hope chocolate chip cookies are okay." "You didn't have to. I wanted to," she said firmly, pulling out napkins and carefully wrapped cookies. "Tommy! Lily! Snack time!" The children raced over, their faces flushed from playing. They plopped down in the grass at Daniel and Caroline's feet, eagerly accepting the cookies. "These are the best!" Tommy declared through a mouthful of crumbs. "Tommy, manners," Caroline reminded gently, but she was smiling. Daniel watched as Lily broke her cookie in half, offering the bigger piece to Tommy. Such a simple gesture, but it made his chest ache. She was growing up to be just like her mother, always thinking of others first. "The gala was wonderful last night," Caroline said softly, turning toward Daniel. "I meant what I said about you." Daniel stared down at his hands. "You're very kind." "It's not kindness, Daniel. It's truth." He wanted to believe her, but doubt gnawed at him. What would she think if she knew what people were saying? Would she still look at him with that warmth in her eyes? The children finished their cookies and ran back to play, this time heading for the swings. Daniel watched as Tommy helped Lily onto a swing, then started pushing her. "Higher?" Lily called out, giggling. "Be careful," Daniel and Caroline said in unison, then shared a surprised look before chuckling. The late afternoon light painted everything golden, making the playground look almost magical. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves overhead, carrying the sound of distant traffic and children's laughter. "They're good for each other," Caroline observed, watching the kids. "Tommy's been different since meeting Lily. Happier." Daniel nodded. "Lily too. She talks about him all the time." A comfortable silence fell between them. On the swings, Tommy and Lily were taking turns pushing each other, their voices carrying across the playground as they made up stories about flying to the moon. "Sometimes I wonder," Caroline began, then paused. She seemed to be choosing her words carefully. "Do you ever think about starting over, Daniel?" The question hung in the air between them. Daniel watched his daughter, remembering how tiny she'd been when her mother passed away. How scared he'd been that he wouldn't be enough for her. How many nights he'd spent working extra shifts, determined to give her everything she needed. "I think about giving Lily more," he said quietly, meeting Caroline's eyes. "Every single day." The hallways were quiet at this hour, lit only by the soft glow of emergency lights. Daniel pushed his cleaning cart toward the executive floor, his footsteps echoing in the emptiness. The text message from Caroline asking to meet him in her office at 9 had been unexpected. His stomach tightened with worry. These days, any meeting with management made him nervous. He parked his cart by the wall and straightened his uniform jacket. Through the glass walls of Caroline's corner office, he could see her working at her desk, her face illuminated by the glow of her computer screen. She looked tired, her usual perfect posture slightly slumped. Daniel knocked gently on the door frame. "Miss Hartwell?" Caroline looked up and smiled, some of the weariness leaving her face. "Daniel, please come in." "And it's Caroline, remember?" He stepped inside, hands clasped in front of him. The office was warm and inviting, despite its modern design, with touches of Caroline's personality in the fresh flowers on her desk and family photos arranged neatly on a side table. "Have a seat," she said, gesturing to one of the chairs facing her desk. "I know you're working, but I wanted your input on something important." Daniel sat down carefully, very aware of his work clothes against the expensive leather chair. "Of course. How can I help?" Caroline pushed aside a stack of papers and leaned forward, her expression serious. "I've been reviewing the building's budget all week. The board is pushing hard for significant cuts, particularly in maintenance services." She paused, studying his face. "But before I make any decisions, I want to hear from someone who knows this building and its people, from the ground up." Daniel's throat felt dry. This was it, the conversation he'd been dreading. But something in Caroline's tone made him hope she was actually listening, not just going through the motions. "The cleaning staff here," he began carefully. "We're more than just people who empty trash cans and mop floors. We know every inch of this building. We notice when something's wrong before it becomes a problem." Caroline nodded, encouraging him to continue. "Like last month? When Marco spotted that leak in the parking garage ceiling? If he hadn't caught it early, the repair costs would have been much higher." Daniel straightened in his chair. "And Rosa, she knows every tenant's schedule. When Mr. Peterson from the law firm worked late last week, she made sure to clean his office last so he wouldn't be disturbed." "These are the details I need to hear," Caroline said, making notes. "Tell me more about the staff. How many families depend on this work?" Daniel thought about his colleagues, their stories, their struggles, their dignity. Marco has 3 kids in college. Rosa's supporting her elderly mother. Jim's wife is fighting cancer. He met Caroline's eyes. "Most of us are living paycheck to paycheck, but we take pride in our work. We treat this building like it's our own." Caroline stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. The easy solution would be to hire a cut-rate cleaning service, save money on paper. She turned back to face him. "But that's not always the right solution, is it?" "No," Daniel said, quietly but firmly. It might look good on a spreadsheet, but you'd lose something valuable, something you can't measure in dollars. Trust, Caroline said. Reliability. Pride in work, well done. She smiled slightly. The kind of person who carries a sewing kit to help a stranger in the rain. Daniel felt his cheeks warm at the memory. I've been watching how you work, Daniel, she continued, returning to her desk. How you treat people. The way you notice things others miss. Your attention to detail. The respect you show everyone, regardless of their position. She paused, tapping her pen thoughtfully against the desk. It's made me think about possibilities beyond traditional roles. Daniel shifted in his chair, uncertain where this was going. I'm not sure I understand. What if there was a different way to approach this? Caroline's eyes lit up with something that looked like inspiration. A way to keep good people employed while adding more value to the building and its tenants? She shook her head slightly. I don't want to say too much yet. I need to work out the details. But I think there might be an opportunity here that could benefit everyone. Daniel felt a mix of hope and uncertainty. I just want to do good work, he said honestly, to take care of Lily and make her proud. Caroline's expression softened. I know, that's exactly why. She stopped herself and glanced at the clock. I've kept you from your work long enough. Thank you for being honest with me, Daniel. It's helped more than you know. Daniel stood, straightening his uniform again. Thank you for listening, Miss Hart, Caroline. As he reached the door, Caroline called after him. Daniel, whatever changes come, remember that I value integrity above all else. People like you make this building more than just steel and glass. He nodded, not trusting himself to speak, and stepped back into the quiet hallway. His cart waited where he'd left it, the familiar tools of his trade ready for another night's work. But something had shifted, like a key turning in a lock. He just wasn't sure yet what door it might open. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of the office building, casting long shadows across the freshly mopped floors. Daniel worked methodically, his movements precise and practiced as he cleaned the lobby's glass doors. Around him, early arrivers hurried to their offices, their shoes clicking against the polished tiles. Did you hear? A whispered conversation drifted from the security desk. That janitor? The one Mrs. Bennett keeps talking to? Daniel kept his head down, focusing on a stubborn smudge. His ears burned as he pretended not to hear. I heard he's getting promoted to supervisor, one guard said. Makes sense, right? She's always praising his work. Please, another voice scoffed. My cousin in accounting says he's just trying to marry into money. Smart move, if you ask me. Single dad, probably desperate. The words stung like tiny paper cuts. Daniel moved his cleaning cart further away, but their voices followed. Well, he did fix her dress that one time, and now she invites him to fancy parties? Come on. Daniel's hands trembled slightly as he sprayed glass cleaner on the next window. He thought of Lily's proud face when she helped him prepare for the gala, of Tommy's infectious laugh during their playground visits. Those moments had been real, pure, and simple. But here, in the artificial light of office politics, everything seemed tainted. By mid-morning, the rumors had spread like spilled coffee. Daniel noticed the changed looks from other cleaning staff, some envious, others accusatory. During his break, he sat alone in the maintenance room, his sandwich untouched. Maria, one of the older cleaning ladies who had always been kind to him, shuffled in. Don't let them get to you, Daniel, she said softly, patting his shoulder. People always talk when they're scared about their jobs. He managed a weak smile. Thanks, Maria. I just wish they knew. Knew what? That you're just being yourself? She chuckled. That's exactly what bothers them. In their world, kindness must have an agenda. The afternoon dragged on. Daniel threw himself into his work, scrubbing floors that were already clean, organizing supply closets that didn't need organizing. Anything to keep his mind off the whispers. Around 4, he was restocking paper towels in the third-floor bathroom when voices drifted in from the hallway. He recognized Mr. Peterson, the building's operations manager, speaking in hushed tones. It's official now. The board approved it this morning. The whole contract? Another voice asked. Complete termination. We're switching to an outside service provider. Cheaper, more efficient. Daniel's hands froze on the paper towel dispenser. What about the current staff? 2 weeks' notice. Standard severance package. No exceptions. Even Bennett's favorite janitor? A dry laugh. Even him. Though I hear she tried to argue for keeping some positions in-house. Board wouldn't budge. It's all or nothing. The voices moved away, but Daniel remained rooted to the spot. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, suddenly too bright, too harsh, 2 weeks. The words echoed in his mind like a gong. He thought of his small apartment, of Lily's school fees, of the careful budget he maintained that already left no room for extras. His chest tightened. In the mirror above the sink, his reflection stared back. A man in his 40s, wearing a worn uniform, dark circles under his eyes. He'd worked so hard to maintain his dignity, to show Lily that honest work was something to be proud of. Now what? The afternoon staff meeting felt like a fever dream. Daniel sat in the back of the maintenance room, barely hearing the official announcement. Around him, colleagues wept quietly or sat in stunned silence. Maria reached across and squeezed his hand. The supervisor droned on about transition periods and reference letters, but Daniel's mind was already racing ahead. He'd need to start job hunting immediately, maybe look in other districts. The thought of moving Lily to a new school made his heart ache, but what choice did he have? As the meeting ended and people filed out, Daniel remained seated, staring at his calloused hands. These hands had fixed countless things in this building: broken chairs, torn curtains, squeaky doors. They had wiped away children's spills and polished windows until they sparkled. They had sewn a torn dress in the rain. Now they would have to find somewhere else to be useful. The maintenance room slowly emptied until only Daniel remained. Through the small window, he could see the sky turning orange with sunset. Soon it would be time for his night shift, one of the last he would work in this building that had become like a second home. He stood slowly, straightened his uniform, and reached for his cleaning cart. Whatever came next, he would face it with the same quiet dignity he'd always maintained. He owed that much to himself, and to Lily. But as he pushed his cart into the empty hallway, even the wheels seemed to whisper the truth he couldn't escape. In 2 weeks, he would be just another unemployed janitor in a city full of people looking for work. Daniel sat on the edge of Lily's small bed, holding her freshly polished school shoes. The leather was starting to crack at the toes, but he'd done his best to make them presentable. The bottle of shoe polish sat beside him, its familiar sharp smell filling the tiny bedroom they shared in their one-bedroom apartment. "Just a few more months," he whispered, running his thumb over a scuff mark he couldn't quite buff out. "Maybe we can get you new ones for Christmas." The afternoon sun streamed through the thin curtains, casting a warm glow over Lily's few possessions: her treasured books from the library, the small collection of stuffed animals, and the picture of her mother on the bedside table. Daniel's eyes lingered on the photo, his chest tightening. "What would you do, Maria?" he asked softly, setting the shoes down beside Lily's backpack. "I thought I was doing better, giving her more stability. Now." He stood up and walked to the kitchen, where bills were spread across their small folding table. His fingers traced over the numbers: rent, utilities, food. Without his job at the building, even with his savings, they'd only last a couple of months. The thought of moving Lily from her school, away from Tommy and her other friends, made his stomach churn. Tommy. Caroline. The memory of the charity gala flickered through his mind. The warmth in Caroline's eyes when she introduced him, the way Lily had twirled in her dress, feeling like a princess. For a moment, he'd allowed himself to believe in something more. But now the whispers in the hallways followed him like shadows. Gold digger, they called him. Trying to marry into money. Each word felt like a physical blow, tarnishing what had been pure and unexpected. A connection he hadn't sought but had treasured. Daniel walked to the window, watching the street below, where children played hopscotch on the cracked sidewalk. He thought of the playground where they usually met Caroline and Tommy on Wednesdays, how Lily's face lit up when she saw them approaching. The thought of ending those meetings made his chest ache. "Daddy!" Lily's voice rang out as she burst through the front door, her backpack bouncing. "Can we go to the playground? Tommy said he'd bring his new ball today." Daniel turned, forcing a smile. Not today, mija. I think we should stay home and do your homework first. Lily's face fell. But we always go on Wednesdays. Tommy will be waiting. I know, but… Daniel knelt down to her level, gathering his courage. Listen, Lily. We need to talk about some changes coming up. She tilted her head, her dark eyes, so much like her mother's, watching him carefully. What kind of changes? Well, he began, his throat tight. I might need to look for a new job soon, and that means we might not see Tommy and Mrs. Bennet as much for a while. But why? Lily's voice quivered. Did we do something wrong? No, mi amor. Daniel pulled her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. Sometimes grown-ups need to make hard decisions. It's not anyone's fault. Is it because of what Mr. Peterson said? About you trying to marry Mrs. Bennet? Daniel stiffened. You heard that? Lily nodded against his chest. At the building last week. But I don't understand why it's bad. Don't you like her? She makes you smile. The innocent observation struck him like an arrow. It's complicated, mija. Sometimes people can like each other very much, but timing and circumstances make things difficult. That's stupid, Lily declared with 8-year-old wisdom. If you like someone, and they like you, that should be enough. Daniel smiled sadly, stroking her hair. The world isn't always that simple, my sweet girl. At the playground across town, Caroline checked her watch again, scanning the entrance for any sign of Daniel and Lily. Tommy kicked his new ball against the fence, his excitement from earlier fading with each passing minute. Mom? Tommy called out. Where's Mr. Daniel? And Lily? Caroline wrapped her arms around herself, fighting the worry gnawing at her stomach. Daniel had been different lately. More distant, his usual warm smile replaced by something guarded and sad. She'd noticed how he'd started taking different routes through the building to avoid her, how he'd stopped meeting her eyes during their brief encounters. I'm not sure, honey, she answered, watching a group of pigeons scatter as Tommy's ball rolled near them. Maybe they had other plans today. But it's Wednesday, Tommy insisted, his lower lip trembling slightly. We always play on Wednesdays. Caroline walked over to her son, squeezing his shoulder gently. Sometimes plans change, sweetheart. Is it because of what those mean people said? Tommy asked, surprising her. About Mr. Daniel only being nice to you because he wants your money? Caroline's heart clenched. You heard that? Tommy nodded, picking up his ball and hugging it to his chest. I told them they were wrong. Mr. Daniel is nice to everyone, even when nobody's watching. Like when he fixed Jenny's lunchbox last week, or when he helped old Mrs. Rodriguez carry her groceries. Tears pricked at Caroline's eyes. Of course Daniel would pull away, his pride, his integrity, the very qualities that had drawn her to him, wouldn't allow him to stay where rumors could hurt his reputation or hers. Can we wait a little longer? Tommy asked hopefully. Maybe they're just late. Caroline looked at the empty playground entrance, her heart aching. Sure, honey. We can wait a little longer. But as the afternoon shadows lengthened and other families began heading home, she knew they wouldn't come. The space beside her on the bench remained empty, and the sound of Lily's laughter was notably absent from the playground's symphony of children's voices. Caroline caught up with Daniel in the dimly lit parking garage, her heels echoing against the concrete. Daniel, wait! She hurried forward, her normally composed demeanor slightly rattled. You've been avoiding me for days. Daniel stopped, but didn't turn around, his shoulders tense beneath his worn uniform. The mop bucket beside him cast long shadows in the fluorescent lighting. Mrs. Hartwell, he said formally, the distance in his voice making Caroline flinch. I was just finishing up my shift. Since when am I Mrs. Hartwell to you? Caroline moved to stand in front of him, forcing him to meet her eyes. What's going on? The children keep asking about you. Tommy misses his playground buddy. Daniel's face softened at the mention of Tommy, but he steeled himself. It's better this way. People are talking, and I won't have your reputation damaged because of me. My reputation? Caroline's voice rose slightly. Is that what this is about? The gossip? I heard about the contract, Daniel said quietly. I know I'm losing my job, and that's business. I understand. But I won't have people thinking I tried to. He trailed off, his cheeks flushing. That I tried to use our friendship, or the children's relationship, to keep my position. Caroline's expression shifted from confusion to understanding. Daniel, you can't possibly think I care about what people are saying. After everything we've shared these past weeks. That's exactly why I need to step back, Daniel interrupted, his voice gentle but firm. You're kind, Caroline, too kind. But we come from different worlds, and I was foolish to forget that. Different worlds? Caroline stepped closer, her voice dropping. Is that what you see when you look at me? Just another rich businesswoman? Daniel's grip tightened on his mop handle. I see someone who gave me dignity when others wouldn't. Someone who makes my daughter smile brighter than she has in years. That's why I have to protect you from the rumors. Protect me? Caroline's eyes flashed. I don't need protection, Daniel. I need... She caught herself, taking a deep breath. The children need each other. Tommy talks about Lily constantly. They've created this beautiful friendship, and that's what makes this harder, Daniel admitted, his voice rough. Lily adores Tommy, but I can't let her build dreams on something that isn't real. Who says it isn't real? Caroline challenged. The gossips? The same people who've never seen you reading stories to both children at the playground? Who've never watched you fix Tommy's toy car or help him with his math homework? Daniel shifted uncomfortably. Caroline, please, you have a position to maintain, a business to run. And you think I care more about that than... She stopped again, frustrated. Then the connections we've made? Then watching our children grow closer? I think you shouldn't have to choose, Daniel said softly. I won't put you in that position. Caroline reached out, touching his arm. Daniel, look at me. Really look at me. Do I seem like someone who lets others dictate my choices? He finally met her gaze, and the warmth there made his resolve waver. No, he admitted. You've always been stronger than that. Then why are you trying to make this choice for me? Her voice was gentle now. Why are you pulling away when we could face this together? Daniel's shoulders slumped. Because I'm scared, he whispered, the words barely audible. Scared of hoping for something more than what I deserve. Oh, Daniel. Caroline's hand tightened on his arm. You deserve so much more than you think. You've shown me what real strength looks like, not in boardrooms or business deals, but in the quiet moments, in the way you love your daughter, in how you treat everyone with dignity. I'm just a janitor, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. You've never been just anything, Caroline replied firmly. And you know it. Daniel looked at her for a long moment, torn between his fear and the warmth in her eyes. Finally he stepped back, gently removing his arm from her grip. I'm sorry, he said softly. I can't risk Lily getting hurt. Or you. Please understand, this is the right thing to do. Daniel, goodbye, Caroline. He turned away, pushing his mop bucket toward the service elevator, leaving her standing alone in the dim light. Later that night in his small apartment, Daniel knelt beside his bed. Lily's soft breathing filled the room from her side of the partition they'd created with a bookshelf. Lord, he whispered, his hands clasped tightly. Give me strength. Show me the right path. He paused, listening to Lily's gentle snores. Maybe leaving the city is the best way to protect her future. The afternoon sun filtered through the window of Tommy's bedroom, where he and Lily sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by scattered toys. But neither child was playing. Lily's eyes were red from crying, and Tommy held her hand like a protective older brother, even though they were the same age. I heard Daddy on the phone. Lily sniffled, wiping her nose with her sleeve. He was asking Uncle Mike if there were any jobs in Chicago. Her lower lip trembled. That's really far away. Tommy squeezed her hand tighter. You can't move. You're my sister now. We promised, remember? Lily nodded, reaching into her pocket and pulling out a piece of string they'd tied together at school, their special sibling bracelet. The sight of it made fresh tears well up in her eyes. Maybe if we tell my mom, Tommy suggested, his young face scrunched in thought. She likes your dad. I can tell because she smiles different when he's around. But Daddy's being weird, Lily said. He won't even go to the park anymore when your mom's there. He says it's," she struggled with the big word, "inappropriate." Tommy flopped backward onto his rocket ship bedspread. "Grown-ups make everything so complicated." He sat up suddenly, his eyes bright with an idea. "Wait! The church thing! Your dad fixes toys there, right?" Lily nodded. "Every Wednesday night. He fixes broken stuff for kids who don't have much money." "My mom always says actions speak louder than words," Tommy said proudly, clearly quoting something he'd heard many times. "Maybe if she sees your dad doing something good, really sees it, she'll fix everything." Lily's face lit up with hope. "But how do we get her there? Daddy would know if we just told her to come." Tommy grinned mischievously. "Remember when I told Mom I needed help with my science project, but really I just wanted her to meet my teacher? We could do something like that?" The children huddled together, whispering their plan. Outside Tommy's room, Caroline paused in the hallway, a basket of laundry in her arms. She'd been about to remind them it was almost dinner time, but the serious tone of their conversation made her hesitate. "Operation Save Daddy starts tomorrow," she heard Tommy declare solemnly. Caroline's heart tightened. She'd noticed Daniel's withdrawal too, felt the loss of his quiet presence at their impromptu playground meetings. The children's distress only confirmed her fears that something was terribly wrong. The next evening, Tommy launched their plan with Oscar-worthy dedication. "Mom," he wailed from his room, "my robot's broken. The one Grandpa gave me." Caroline rushed in to find Tommy holding his beloved mechanical toy, its arm hanging limply. Lily stood beside him, looking suspiciously innocent. "See?" Tommy sniffled convincingly. "And Lily says her dad can fix anything. He's at church right now, fixing toys for other kids. Please, Mom, can we go?" Caroline looked between the two children, noting their eager expressions. Something felt orchestrated about this, but she couldn't deny the flutter in her stomach at the thought of seeing Daniel again. "Please?" Lily added, her big eyes pleading. "Daddy's really good at fixing things. He even fixed Mrs. Peterson's wheelchair last month when it got stuck." 20 minutes later, Caroline found herself following the children into a modest church basement. The space was warm and welcoming, with volunteers sorting donations and organizing supplies. In the corner, at a workbench beneath fluorescent lights, sat Daniel. Caroline's breath caught. He looked different here, more at peace, his usual tension absent, as he carefully repaired a doll's arm. A little girl waited nearby, watching with complete trust as Daniel worked his magic. "There you go, sweetie," he said softly, handing the doll back. "Good as new." The child's face lit up with joy as she hugged the toy close. Tommy and Lily pulled Caroline closer, no longer pretending about the robot. They wanted her to see this, to see Daniel as they did. Another child approached Daniel's station, this time with a wooden train missing a wheel. Daniel smiled, reaching for his tools. "Let's see what we can do for your friend here," he said, examining the toy with genuine care. Caroline watched, transfixed. This wasn't the apologetic janitor or the nervous man in a borrowed suit at her gala. This was Daniel in his element, patient, skilled, and completely focused on bringing joy to others. A volunteer passed by with a box of donated items. "Don't know what we'd do without Daniel," she told Caroline warmly. "He's been coming every Wednesday for 3 years now, started right after his wife passed, said it helped him feel closer to her. She used to volunteer here too." Caroline's eyes stung with unexpected tears. She thought of all the times she'd seen Daniel fix things around her building. The stuck elevator door, the temperamental coffee maker in the break room, even her torn dress that rainy night. But it wasn't just objects he repaired. He fixed broken spirits too, one small kindness at a time. The children had slipped away to help sort toys, leaving Caroline to observe Daniel unnoticed. She watched as he taught a teenage volunteer how to repair a bike chain, his instructions clear and encouraging. When an elderly woman struggled with a heavy box, he immediately stood to help, guiding her to a chair and making sure she was comfortable before returning to his work. Each interaction revealed another layer of the man she'd been getting to know, his genuine humility, his natural instinct to care for others, his quiet strength. This wasn't someone trying to climb social ladders or curry favor. This was simply Daniel, living his values every day, asking nothing in return. The robot in Tommy's backpack suddenly felt very much like the excuse it was. Caroline smiled, grateful for the children's scheming hearts. They'd known exactly what she needed to see. Not Daniel the janitor, or Daniel the single father, but Daniel the man, in all his understated glory. As she watched him comfort a small boy whose toy truck seemed beyond repair, Caroline's heart filled with certainty. She couldn't let this man slip away. Not when he'd shown her what real wealth looked like. The kind that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with love. The church basement hummed with quiet activity. Folding tables lined the walls, each covered with broken toys waiting to be fixed. Daniel sat alone at the far end, his skilled hands moving with gentle precision as he repaired a tattered teddy bear. The bear's stuffing peeked through worn seams, but Daniel's careful stitches were slowly bringing it back to life. The fluorescent lights cast shadows across his face, highlighting the tired lines around his eyes. He'd been here for hours, finding peace in the simple act of mending what others might have thrown away. Here, at least, he could make something whole again. "I thought I might find you here." Caroline's voice, soft but clear, made Daniel's hands freeze mid-stitch. He didn't look up, couldn't bear to see the mixture of concern and disappointment he knew would be in her eyes. "The children led me here," she continued, pulling up a chair beside him. "They're quite the determined pair when they want to be." Daniel's shoulders tensed. "They shouldn't have bothered you, I'm sorry." "Don't be." Caroline picked up one of the broken toys, a wooden train with a missing wheel. "They care about you. We all do." The basement's silence felt heavy between them. Other volunteers worked at distant tables, their murmured conversations creating a gentle backdrop. "You've been avoiding me," Caroline said, not as an accusation but as a simple truth. "And I think I know why." Daniel finally set down his needle, but still couldn't meet her gaze. "The rumors are just that, rumors." Caroline's voice carried a quiet strength. "Since when do whispers define who we are?" "It's not just that." Daniel's hands fidgeted with the teddy bear's worn fur. "I'm losing my job, the contract." "I know about the contract," Caroline interrupted gently. "But running away isn't the answer, especially not to Chicago." Daniel's head snapped up, surprise finally making him look at her. "How did you—" "Lily heard you on the phone," she told Tommy, who told me. Caroline's expression softened. "She's terrified of losing her new family." The word family made Daniel's chest ache. He picked up his needle again, needing something to do with his hands. "I can't expect you to—" "To what? Care?" Caroline reached out, carefully taking the teddy bear from his grip. "Look at what you're doing here, Daniel. You're fixing broken things, giving them new life. That's who you are. You see value where others see nothing worth saving." "That's different," Daniel protested weakly. "These are just toys." "Are they?" Caroline gestured around the basement. "Every toy here represents a child's happiness. You understand that better than anyone. It's why you're here, isn't it? Because you know that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can change someone's world." Daniel swallowed hard, remembering the night he'd fixed her dress in the rain. It seemed so long ago now. "The rumors will pass," Caroline continued. "But the good you do, that stays. I've watched you with Lily, with Tommy, with everyone you meet. You carry such quiet dignity, such genuine care for others. Why can't you see that's worth more than any gossip?" "I don't want to be a burden," Daniel admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "You have your position to think about, your reputation." "Stop." Caroline's tone was firm but kind. "You've never been a burden, Daniel. You're a blessing to this community, to the children." She paused, taking a deep breath. "To me." Daniel's hands trembled slightly as he reached for another toy needing repair. "I don't belong in your world, Caroline. The gala proved that." The gala proved exactly the opposite. Caroline leaned forward, making sure he could see the sincerity in her eyes. "Do you know what everyone remembered from that night? Not the fancy dresses or the expensive wine. They remembered you, the man who spoke about hope and second chances with such genuine conviction that he moved an entire room of cynical business people to tears." A faint blush colored Daniel's cheeks at the memory. I just spoke from experience. Exactly. Caroline smiled. That's what makes you special, Daniel. You don't just talk about kindness, you live it. Every day, in 100 small ways. She picked up a broken doll from the table, examining its crooked arm. You know, when I first took over the building, I thought success meant cutting costs and maximizing profits. But watching you, she shook her head. You've taught me that true value isn't always found in a balance sheet. Daniel looked at her then, really looked at her, and saw not the polished businesswoman who owned his building, but someone who understood what it meant to question your place in the world. I'm scared, he admitted quietly. Not of the gossip, not really. I'm scared of hoping for too much. Caroline reached out and placed her hand over his. Sometimes hope is exactly what we need most. And you, Daniel Reyes, have given hope to so many others. Maybe it's time you allowed yourself to receive some in return. The teddy bear sat between them, its newly mended seams a testament to patience and care. Daniel looked at it, then at their joined hands, and felt something shift in his chest. Not quite acceptance, but perhaps the beginning of it. I don't know how to stay, he said softly. Without my job? Then let's figure it out together, Caroline replied. Because you're not just the janitor who fixed my dress anymore. You're the man who showed me what real strength looks like, and that's worth fighting for. Daniel's eyes glistened in the fluorescent light. You really think I'm a blessing? He asked, his voice thick with emotion. I know you are, Caroline answered without hesitation. And I'm not the only one who sees it. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the office building's main conference room. Every seat was taken, with additional chairs brought in to accommodate the crowd of tenants, staff, and executives. The air felt thick with tension as Caroline stood at the front, her posture straight and professional, but her eyes held a fierce determination that made several people shift uncomfortably in their seats. Daniel stood at the back of the room, mop in hand, trying to blend into the shadows. He hadn't planned to attend the tenant meeting, but Caroline had specifically requested his presence. His worn uniform felt out of place among the sea of business suits. Thank you all for coming, Caroline began, her voice clear and steady. Before we discuss building updates, there's a matter I need to address. She paused, her gaze sweeping across the room. Recently, there have been rumors circulating about one of our most valuable team members. A murmur rippled through the crowd. In the third row, Marcus, the maintenance supervisor who had started many of the rumors, suddenly found his shoes fascinating. Daniel Reyes, Caroline continued, causing Daniel's heart to skip a beat, has worked in this building for 7 years. Every night, while most of us are home with our families, he's here ensuring our workplace is clean and comfortable. She moved from behind the podium, stepping closer to her audience. When I first met Daniel, it was on a rainy night. My expensive dress was torn, and I was mortified. Without hesitation, he offered his only jacket to cover me and fixed my dress with the same care he gives to everything he does. Several heads turned toward Daniel, who fought the urge to step further back into the shadows. His cheeks burned, but he forced himself to stand tall. Since then, I've learned that this act of kindness wasn't unusual for Daniel. It's who he is. He repairs toys for underprivileged children in his spare time. He's raising a wonderful daughter on his own. He treats everyone in this building, from the CEO on the top floor to the security guard at the front desk, with equal respect. Caroline's voice took on an edge of steel, so when I hear whispers suggesting that Daniel's character is anything less than exemplary, I take it personally. These rumors aren't just cruel. They're beneath the standards we set for this building and its community. Marcus sank lower in his chair as Caroline's gaze lingered on him for a moment. Let me be absolutely clear, she continued. Daniel's position in this building is based solely on his merit, his work ethic, and his integrity. Anyone suggesting otherwise is not only wrong, but is demonstrating their own lack of character. The silence in the room was absolute. Daniel felt a lump form in his throat as he watched Caroline defend him with such conviction. As we move forward with changes in our building operations, I expect every person in this room to remember that our success is built on mutual respect and dignity. Those who can't maintain these standards might find themselves looking for new office space. The message wasn't subtle. Several people nodded, while others exchanged guilty glances. After the meeting concluded, and the room slowly emptied, Daniel remained, mechanically wiping down the conference table. His hands trembled slightly as he worked, his mind replaying Caroline's words. "Daniel?" Caroline's voice was softer now, private. He turned to face her, struggling to find the right words. "You didn't have to do that," he finally managed. "Yes, I did." Caroline moved closer, her heels clicking on the polished floor. "Those rumors were hurting you, and they were hurting this community I'm trying to build." Daniel set down his cleaning cloth, forcing himself to meet her eyes. "Thank you," he said simply, but the words carried the weight of years of dignity denied, of countless moments when he'd swallowed his pride and kept working. "I meant every word," Caroline replied. She leaned against the conference table, her professional facade softening. "You know, when I bought this building, I thought I was just acquiring property. But I'm learning it's about the people who make it more than just concrete and glass." Daniel nodded, understanding completely. "It's like fixing those toys at church," he said quietly. "Sometimes, the most valuable things are the ones others overlook." A smile touched Caroline's lips. "Exactly." She paused, studying him with gentle eyes. "I hope you know that you don't have to run anymore, Daniel. Not from kindness, and certainly not from people who don't understand your worth." The morning sun caught her face, highlighting the sincerity in her expression. Daniel felt something shift inside him, like a weight he'd carried for so long finally beginning to lift. "I'm starting to believe that," he admitted, his voice rough with emotion. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the sun warming the room, the city bustling far below. In that quiet space, something deepened between them. A trust built not on grand gestures or declarations, but on the simple recognition of each other's true nature. "Well," Caroline said finally, straightening up, "I should let you get back to work. But Daniel," she waited until he looked at her again. "Thank you for staying, even when it would have been easier to leave." He watched her walk toward the door, her heels clicking softly on the floor. Just before she reached it, he called out, "Caroline?" She turned. "Thank you for seeing me," he said simply. "Not just the uniform or the job, but me." Her smile was warm and genuine. "That's the easiest part of my day," she replied, and then she was gone, leaving Daniel in the sunlit room, his heart fuller than it had been in years. The afternoon sunlight painted golden rectangles across Caroline's office floor as she sat behind her mahogany desk, hands clasped together. Daniel stood near the doorway, still in his janitor's uniform, uncertain whether to step further in or remain where he was. "Please, sit down, Daniel," Caroline said warmly, gesturing to one of the comfortable chairs facing her desk. Her smile was genuine, lacking any of the corporate polish she usually wore in business meetings. Daniel lowered himself carefully into the chair, his worn work boots a stark contrast against the plush carpet. "Miss Hartwell, Caroline," she corrected gently. "After everything, I think we're well past formalities." He nodded, managing a small smile. "Caroline, I wanted to thank you for what you said in the meeting this morning. You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did." She leaned forward, her expression serious. "Those rumors were cruel and unfair. But that's not why I asked you to come see me." She reached for a folder on her desk, opening it with deliberate care. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about the future of this building." Daniel's shoulders tensed slightly. Here it was, the official notice about his position being terminated. "This building isn't just office space," Caroline continued. "It's a community. We have families here. Children who come after school to wait for their working parents, elderly tenants who sometimes need an extra hand." She paused, studying Daniel's face. "What we're missing is someone to bring all these pieces together." Daniel's brow furrowed in confusion. "I'm not sure I understand." "I'm creating a new position," Caroline explained, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. "Community liaison for the building. The role would involve organizing family programs, coordinating volunteer efforts, managing our charitable initiatives, and ensuring that everyone, from our youngest visitors to our most senior tenants, feels supported and connected." She slid a document across the desk toward him. "And I want you to take the position." Daniel stared at the paper, his hands trembling slightly as he picked it up. The salary listed made his eyes widen. It was nearly double what he made as a janitor. "But why me?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Caroline stood up and walked around her desk, perching on its edge closer to Daniel. "Because I've watched you, Daniel. I've seen how you fix things before anyone even notices they're broken. How you remember everyone's names, their stories, their struggles. You don't just clean this building, you care for it, and more importantly, you care for the people in it." She gestured to the paper in his hands. "The toy repairs you do at church, the way you helped Mrs. Peterson when her grandson was sick, how you always make sure the vending machine in the lobby has those special crackers Tommy likes. That's who you are. You're already doing this job in so many ways. I'm just making it official." Daniel's throat felt tight. "I don't have the right qualifications." "You have exactly the right qualifications," Caroline interrupted firmly. "You have compassion, integrity, and an innate understanding of what people need. Everything else can be learned." The door to Caroline's office creaked open, and Lily poked her head in, followed closely by Tommy. Both children had clearly been waiting outside, barely containing their excitement. "Did you tell him yet?" Tommy burst out, earning a gentle shush from his mother. Lily ran to her father's side, her small hands gripping his arm. "Daddy, Miss Caroline told us you might get to help all the kids in the building, like when you fixed Jenny's backpack last week." Daniel looked down at his daughter's shining face, seeing in her eyes the same hope he'd been afraid to feel himself. "Sweetheart, it's not that simple. There's a lot to consider." "But you're so good at helping people," Lily insisted. She wrapped her arms around his neck in a tight hug. "Now you can help more kids like Tommy and me." Daniel held his daughter close, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. Over her shoulder, he caught Caroline's eye, saw the gentle understanding in her expression. She wasn't offering him charity or trying to save him. She was giving him a chance to be who he truly was, to use his gifts in a way that could make a real difference. In his daughter's embrace, he felt the last of his doubts begin to fade. Maybe it was time to stop running from kindness, as Caroline had said. Maybe it was time to embrace a new chapter, not just for himself, but for Lily too. Slowly, deliberately, he reached for the pen on Caroline's desk. The community room buzzed with activity as Daniel adjusted a banner that read, "Building Better Futures Together." His new suit, simple but well-fitted, replaced the familiar janitor's uniform. Around him, volunteers arranged tables with donation boxes and craft supplies for the children's corner. "Is this centered enough?" Daniel called down to Mrs. Chen from the 4th floor, who gave him an enthusiastic thumbs up. He climbed down the ladder carefully, wiping his slightly sweaty palms on his pants. Even after 3 weeks in his new position, he still felt the flutter of nerves before events like this. The room had transformed from a rarely used space into something warm and inviting. Bright tablecloths covered the folding tables, and cheerful posters advertised various local charities. The afternoon sun streamed through the windows, making everything look golden and hopeful. "Daddy," Lily's voice rang out as she burst through the door, Tommy right behind her. "Can we help set up the craft table?" Daniel smiled, his nervousness easing at the sight of his daughter's enthusiasm. "Of course, sweetheart. Just be careful with the scissors." The children worked together, arranging colored paper and markers with serious concentration. Daniel watched them for a moment, marveling at how natural their friendship had become. Tommy had Lily's determined expression as he lined up the glue sticks perfectly straight. "This looks wonderful," Caroline's voice came from the doorway. She stood there in a casual blazer and jeans, looking more relaxed than her usual business attire. "The tenants are already gathering in the lobby." Daniel straightened his tie self-consciously. "I hope we have enough supplies for everyone." "More than enough," Caroline assured him, stepping closer to adjust his slightly crooked name badge. "You've thought of everything." The first families began filtering in, and Daniel found himself falling naturally into the role of host. He greeted everyone by name, the young couple from the second floor with their newborn, the retired teacher from the sixth who always shared her cookies, the busy single mom from the third who rarely had time to attend building events. "Welcome, everyone," Daniel said into the microphone, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "Today, we're partnering with local charities to help families in need. Every donation, no matter how small, makes a difference." As he spoke about the various organizations represented, Daniel caught sight of Caroline standing near the back of the room. She was beaming with pride, and something in her expression gave him the confidence to continue with even more enthusiasm. The afternoon flowed smoothly. Children made cards for nursing home residents while their parents sorted through gently used clothes and toys to donate. Daniel moved from station to station, helping where needed, answering questions, and making sure everyone felt included. "Mr. Daniel," called out little Sarah from apartment 3B, "can you help me reach the markers?" He was there in an instant, pulling down the box of supplies. Nearby, he overheard two tenants talking. "Such a change in this building lately," one said to the other. "It feels more like a community now." "Daniel's perfect for this job," the other replied. "Remember how he used to fix things for everyone, even when he was the janitor?" Their words warmed his heart as he continued his rounds. At the book donation table, he found Lily and Tommy organizing novels by size. "We're making it look pretty," Lily explained seriously. "Just like you taught us, Dad," Tommy added without thinking, then froze when he realized what he'd said. The room went quiet for a moment before breaking into gentle laughter. Daniel felt his face flush, and when he glanced at Caroline, he saw her cheeks were pink too. But she was smiling, and so was Tommy, though he looked a bit embarrassed. "Well," Daniel said, ruffling Tommy's hair affectionately, "those books do look very nice and organized." The moment passed naturally, filled with more laughter and the continuing bustle of the event. But Daniel caught Caroline's eye across the room, and they shared a look that held more meaning than either could express. The autumn evening painted long shadows across Caroline's living room as she poured coffee into two matching mugs. Daniel sat on the edge of her plush couch, still looking a bit out of place despite the weeks that had passed since his promotion. Through the large windows, they could see Lily and Tommy in the building's small courtyard garden, chasing each other around the stone path. "They're quite the pair, aren't they?" Caroline smiled, handing Daniel his coffee. The ceramic was warm against his calloused hands. "Like they've known each other forever," Daniel agreed softly. He watched as Lily showed Tommy how to make a clover chain, just as his late wife Maria had once taught her. The memory caught in his throat, unexpectedly. Caroline noticed the change in his expression. "You okay?" Daniel took a slow breath, turning the coffee mug in his hands. "Yeah, just. Lily does something sometimes that reminds me so much of Maria." He paused, then added quietly, "Her mother." Caroline settled into the armchair across from him, tucking her feet beneath her. The formal businesswoman was gone, replaced by someone softer in comfortable clothes and sock feet. "Tell me about her?" she asked gently. Daniel hadn't talked about Maria to anyone in years, not really. But something about the quiet evening and Caroline's gentle presence made it feel safe. "She was sunshine," he said finally. "Always smilin', even when things were tough. She could make friends with anyone, kind of like Lily does now." "I see where Lily gets her spark then," Caroline said warmly. Daniel nodded, a sad smile touching his lips. "Maria worked at the local library. That's where we met, actually. I was trying to find books about furniture restoration, and he chuckled at the memory. She wouldn't let me leave until I had exactly the right references. Spent almost an hour helping me." "She sounds wonderful," Caroline said softly. She was. Daniel's voice grew quieter. "When she got sick, she never lost that light. Even in the hospital, she'd make the nurses laugh. His voice caught. She made me promise to keep living, really living, not just existing. For Lily's sake, and my own." Caroline reached across and touched his hand briefly. "You've honored that promise beautifully, Daniel. Look at everything you've built for Lily." Daniel looked up, meeting her eyes. "Thank you. It hasn't been easy, but..." He glanced out at the children again. Seeing Lily happy makes everything worth it." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the kids play. Tommy was now attempting to make his own clover chain, his tongue stuck out in concentration. "What about Tommy's father?" Daniel asked carefully. "If you don't mind me asking." Caroline's fingers tightened slightly around her mug. "James? He chose his career over us, essentially. Multiple affairs with colleagues, endless business trips that weren't really about business." She gave a small, humorless laugh. "I probably should have seen it coming. We were both so focused on success, on climbing the corporate ladder, but somewhere along the way, he forgot about being a husband and father." "I'm sorry," Daniel said quietly. "The funny thing is," Caroline continued, "I thought I was the same as him. Driven, ambitious, putting work first. But when I found out about the affairs, when I saw how it was affecting Tommy," she shook her head, "it made me realize what really matters." "That's why you're different," Daniel observed. "You learned from it. You changed." Caroline nodded slowly. "I try to be more present now, more aware of what Tommy needs, though sometimes I still worry I'm not doing enough." "Hey," Daniel said gently, "I see how Tommy looks at you. That boy adores his mom." Caroline smiled, genuine warmth reaching her eyes. "Just like Lily adores her dad." Outside, Lily had managed to make a crown of clovers and was now carefully placing it on Tommy's head. Both children were giggling, their laughter carrying through the window. "You know," Caroline said thoughtfully, "I used to think being strong meant never showing weakness, never letting anyone see you struggle." She paused. "But watching you with Lily, seeing how open you are with her about missing Maria, about your feelings, that's real strength." Daniel considered this. "Maria taught me that. She said feelings aren't weakness. They're what make us human." "She was very wise," Caroline said softly. "She would have liked you," Daniel said, then looked slightly surprised at his own words. Caroline's eyes softened. "I wish I could have met her." They fell quiet again, but it wasn't an uncomfortable silence. The sky outside had deepened to purple, and the first stars were becoming visible. The children had moved on to drawing patterns in the gravel with sticks, their heads bent together in serious consultation. "Sometimes," Caroline admitted, her voice barely above a whisper, "I used to feel so alone. Even in a room full of people at work, even with Tommy. There was this emptiness." Daniel nodded, understanding perfectly. "Like you're the only one awake in the middle of the night." "Yes, exactly." Caroline looked at him with surprise and recognition. "But lately, it feels different," Daniel finished quietly. They sat there in the growing dusk, coffee cups cradled in their hands, watching their children play. The emptiness that had haunted them both for so long seemed to have softened, filled with something warm and tentative and real. Neither felt the need to name it yet. For now, it was enough to simply share this peaceful moment, understanding that whatever came next, they didn't have to face it alone. The crisp December air nipped at their cheeks as Daniel, Caroline, Lily, and Tommy walked down Main Street. Holiday decorations twinkled in every shop window, and the scent of roasted chestnuts drifted from a nearby street vendor. Lily and Tommy skipped ahead, their excitement bubbling over as they approached the Christmas shop. "Look at all the sparkly ones." Lily pressed her nose against the display window, her breath fogging the glass. Tommy joined her, pointing at a collection of glass animals that caught the light. Daniel watched them with a gentle smile, his hands tucked into his coat pockets. The sight of their joy warmed his heart more than any winter coat could. Caroline stood close beside him, her cream-colored scarf fluttering in the breeze. "Shall we go in?" Caroline asked, her eyes twinkling with almost as much excitement as the children's. The bell above the door chimed as they entered. The shop was a wonderland of Christmas decorations, with shelves reaching to the ceiling, and every surface covered in glitter, ribbons, and baubles. Classical holiday music played softly in the background. "Dad, can we get this one?" Tommy held up a silver star that cast rainbow reflections on his face. "That's beautiful," Caroline said, then caught herself. She glanced at Daniel, realizing Tommy had called him Dad again, but Daniel just smiled, the warmth in his eyes deepening. "It would look perfect on top of the tree," he agreed, making Tommy beam, Lily tugged at Daniel's sleeve, pointing to a display of angel ornaments. "These look like Mama's collection," she whispered. Daniel knelt beside her, gently touching one of the delicate figures. "They do, sweetheart. Your mother loved angels." He swallowed hard, and Caroline placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Why don't we get one to remember her by?" Caroline suggested softly. "We could give it a special place on the tree." Lily's eyes brightened through her tears. "Can we really?" "Of course," Daniel said, his voice rough with emotion. "Pick your favorite." While Lily carefully examined each angel, Tommy discovered a box of wooden ornaments. "Look, these ones are painted like little houses. And this one's a carpenter's workshop, just like you used to have, Mr. Daniel." Daniel chuckled. "That's right, buddy. Though my workshop wasn't quite that fancy." They spent the next hour exploring every corner of the shop. The children collected an assortment of ornaments in their basket: the silver star, Lily's chosen angel, the carpenter's workshop, and several colorful balls that caught their eye. Caroline added elegant glass icicles that reminded her of winter mornings. Daniel found himself drawn to a simple wooden ornament carved with the word family. He held it carefully, running his thumb over the letters. "That's perfect," Caroline said softly beside him. He hadn't realized she was watching. "It feels right," he admitted. "All of this does." At the counter, when Daniel reached for his wallet, Caroline shook her head. "My treat," she insisted. "Consider it a housewarming gift for your new apartment." "Caroline," he started to protest. "Please," she said. "Let me do this for our family." The word "our" hung in the air between them, full of meaning. Outside, snow had begun to fall in lazy flakes. Tommy tried to catch them on his tongue while Lily twirled, arms outstretched. "Hot chocolate before we head home?" Caroline suggested. The children cheered their approval. They found a cozy cafe nearby, settling into a booth with steaming mugs topped with whipped cream. Lily and Tommy sat together on one side, comparing their favorite ornaments, while Daniel and Caroline shared the other bench. "Thank you," Daniel said quietly, watching the children. "For everything." Caroline's hand found his under the table. "Thank you for letting us be part of your life." Back at Daniel's apartment, they set up his modest artificial tree in the corner of the living room. It wasn't as grand as the one in Caroline's home, but somehow it felt more special. "Can I put the star on top?" Tommy asked. "How about if your dad lifts you up?" Caroline suggested naturally, and this time nobody flinched at the word dad. Daniel hoisted Tommy onto his shoulders, steadying him as the boy carefully placed the star. Lily clapped when it sat perfectly straight. They spent the next hour decorating, with the children debating the placement of each ornament. Caroline showed them how to hang the glass icicles so they caught the light. Daniel's family ornament found its place front and center, while Lily's angel watched over them from a special branch near the top. As the evening grew late, the excitement of the day caught up with Lily and Tommy. They curled up together on Daniel's worn but comfortable couch, their heads nodding as they tried to stay awake to admire their work. "I think someone's ready for bed," Caroline whispered, watching Tommy's eyes drift shut. Daniel retrieved a soft blanket from the hallway closet. Together, he and Caroline gently draped it over their sleeping children. Their hands brushed as they tucked in the corners, and they shared a tender look over their sleeping forms. The community room buzzed with holiday cheer. Fairy lights twinkled along the walls, and a massive Christmas tree stood proudly in the corner, decorated with ornaments made by the building's children. Families mingled around tables laden with cookies and punch, while carols played softly in the background. Daniel stood at the podium, his hands gripping its edges lightly. He wore the suit from the gala, freshly pressed, but it was his quiet confidence that truly made him shine. The room gradually fell silent as he cleared his throat. "A year ago," he began, his voice steady but warm, "I was just the night janitor here. Some of you probably never noticed me. I was the guy with the mop, the one who emptied your trash cans after hours." He paused, his eyes finding Lily in the crowd. She sat between Tommy and Caroline, beaming up at him. "But someone did notice me. On a rainy night, when I helped fix a torn dress, I learned that kindness doesn't need fancy wrapping, it just needs to be genuine." His gaze met Caroline's, and she dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "This building has become more than concrete and glass," It's become a community. A place where a single dad can find hope again, where children can make friends who become family. Tommy squeezed Lily's hand, and several people in the audience smiled knowingly. Daniel's voice grew stronger. When I was offered the position of community liaison, I was scared. Scared I wasn't good enough. Scared of what people would say. He straightened his shoulders. But dignity isn't about what job you do or how much money you make. It's about treating others with respect and finding the courage to accept kindness when it's offered. Tears glistened in Caroline's eyes as she watched him, pride evident in her expression. Several other audience members were nodding, some wiping their eyes. Look around this room, Daniel continued, gesturing to the decorated space. Every ornament on that tree was made by your children. Every cookie on those tables was baked by someone in this building. We did this together. Rich or poor, tenant or staff, we're all part of something bigger. He smiled, his expression gentle. Second chances don't always come wrapped in obvious packages. Sometimes they come in torn dresses and rainy nights. Sometimes they come in children's laughter and shared lunches. Sometimes they come in the form of people who see past what you do to who you are. The room erupted in applause as Daniel finished speaking. Several people stood, including Caroline, who couldn't take her eyes off him. Lily and Tommy jumped up and down, cheering loudly. As the clapping died down and people returned to mingling, Caroline made her way through the crowd toward Daniel. Her elegant red dress caught the twinkle of the Christmas lights, but it was the warmth in her eyes that drew attention. She touched his arm gently. "We need to talk," she whispered. "Somewhere private." Daniel nodded, and they slipped away from the party, finding a quiet corner in the building's garden terrace. The space had been transformed for winter, with heat lamps providing warmth and white lights strung overhead, creating a magical atmosphere. Caroline turned to face him, her eyes still shining with unshed tears. "That speech, Daniel, you've changed this entire building. You've changed me." "Caroline?" he started, but she held up her hand. "Please, let me finish." She took a deep breath. "Watching you these past months, your dedication to Lily, your kindness to everyone, the way you've embraced this new role. I've never met anyone like you." Daniel stood quietly, his heart pounding as she continued. "The children were right all along, weren't they? About being a family?" Her voice quivered slightly. "I don't want this to end. What we have, you, me, Lily, Tommy, it's special. It's real." The Christmas lights reflected in her eyes as she looked up at him, vulnerable and hopeful. A gentle snow began to fall, adding to the moment's magic. Daniel's hand found hers, warm and steady. "Our families," he said softly, his voice full of emotion, "they can become one." He squeezed her fingers gently. "They already are, in all the ways that matter." The snow continued to fall softly around them as they stood together, their hands intertwined, their hearts beating in sync. Through the window, they could see Lily and Tommy playing near the Christmas tree, their laughter visible even if they couldn't hear it. "You know," Caroline whispered, "maybe the children were wiser than all of us. They saw what we needed before we did." Daniel's thumb traced small circles on her hand as he held it. "They saw family where we saw differences. They saw love where we saw complications." The December snow fell softly outside Caroline's living room windows, each flake catching the glow of street lamps like tiny stars. Inside, warmth and laughter filled the spacious room as Daniel carefully unpacked another box of ornaments. "Daddy, look at this one." Lily held up a glittering angel, its wings catching the light. "Can I put it up high?" Daniel smiled, memories of past Christmases with his late wife flickering through his mind. But tonight, those memories brought comfort rather than pain. "Sure, sweetie. Let me lift you up." "Me next." Tommy bounced on his toes, clutching a red glass ball in his small hands. "Mom, can we put the star on last?" "That's the most special part." Caroline, wearing a soft cream sweater and comfortable jeans instead of her usual business attire, nodded as she untangled a strand of lights. "That's always been our tradition, honey. Some things never change." The tree stood tall in front of the bay window, its branches still bare but promising. Daniel had spent an hour earlier making sure it was perfectly straight, while Caroline had watched him with quiet admiration. Now, working together, they wrapped the lights around the tree in careful spirals. "A little higher on that side," Caroline suggested, pointing to a gap. Their fingers brushed as Daniel adjusted the strand, and neither pulled away too quickly. These small touches had become natural, comfortable. Lily and Tommy worked as a team, passing ornaments back and forth, and deciding which branches needed more decoration. They had developed their own system. Tommy handled the lower branches, while Lily, with help from the adults, reached the higher spots. "Remember when we first met at school?" Tommy asked Lily as they hung candy canes together. "You said we could be family someday." Lily grinned, her eyes sparkling. "And now we are." "Well, almost." She glanced hopefully at the adults, who pretended not to hear. Daniel reached into another box and pulled out a handmade ornament, a small picture frame decorated with popsicle sticks. Inside was a photo of Lily as a toddler. His throat tightened for a moment. Caroline noticed and touched his arm gently. "That's beautiful, Daniel. It should go somewhere special." He nodded, grateful for her understanding. Maria, Lily's mom, she helped her make it. He hung it carefully near the center of the tree, where the lights made the photo glow softly. "Can we make new ones tomorrow?" Tommy asked, his eyes wide. "With all of us in the pictures? That's a wonderful idea," Caroline said, ruffling his hair. "We'll get crafting supplies in the morning." The decorating continued as evening deepened outside. They hung shining balls in red and gold, delicate glass icicles that caught the light, and years' worth of collected ornaments, each with its own story. Caroline shared tales of Tommy's first Christmas, while Daniel told funny stories about Lily learning to walk by holding onto their old artificial tree. "Time for hot chocolate," Caroline announced when they'd nearly finished. She disappeared into the kitchen and returned with a tray of steaming mugs, topped with whipped cream and sprinkled with cinnamon. "Just like Grandma makes," Tommy said, taking a careful sip. "My mom's recipe," Caroline confirmed, passing mugs to everyone. "The secret is real chocolate, melted slowly." They sat on the floor around the tree, sipping their drinks and admiring their work. The lights cast a warm glow over everything, making the room feel magical. Lily leaned against Daniel's shoulder while Tommy curled up next to Caroline. "Just the star left," Daniel reminded them. But looking down, he saw both children's eyes were getting heavy. "We can't sleep yet," Lily protested through a yawn. "The star is the most important part." "Tell you what," Caroline said softly. "Let's put the star up together, and then you two can rest right here under the tree lights for a little while." The children perked up at this special permission. Daniel lifted Tommy while Caroline helped Lily, and together they guided the children's hands to place the golden star at the very top. It settled perfectly, completing their evening's work. Within minutes, Tommy and Lily were fast asleep on the thick carpet, their heads resting on soft cushions Caroline had brought from the couch. The tree lights painted peaceful patterns across their faces. Daniel and Caroline stood side by side, watching the sleeping children. Without words, they moved closer together, until Caroline's head rested naturally against Daniel's shoulder, his arm wrapping gently around her waist. The quiet moment held all the peace and promise they'd both been searching for. The tree glowed before them, each ornament telling part of their story, past sorrows and new joys, separate paths now woven together. In its light, they had found not just hope, but home. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you enjoyed the story of Daniel Reyes, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.